15 on the video podcast, and this is take 2 because I said week 15 like an idiot. But we've got the correct week. Our panel is growing. Returning from Asia is Garbage Man Rob, and our special guest on the podcast today, 30-plus year veteran of professional wrestling, Dynamite Petro.
Hey, thanks.
I'm excited to hear what you have to say because I'm used to hearing your voice behind the scenes on CWE TV, but now we get to have your pretty beautiful face right up here close and personal, and hopefully we'll score you some rats this week.
Put me over.
Yeah, we're going to put you over strong and build you up to be the star you are, and then hopefully there's some residual bookings for it.
This is very cozy, I might tell you. It's very, very cozy.
This is just the way Travis Cole likes it.
Yeah, it's true.
Sandwich between two dudes.
Yeah. It's exactly the way you like it.
I didn't know what to say.
Very well. Moving on.
That's right. And you wonder how those rumors get perpetrated.
Before we went live here, you did ask to sit on my lap because it was a little tight. And
it's not even Christmas.
yeah, and I did inform the panel that it's actually...
I didn't ask, I offered. There's a difference.
Just
I was being selfless.
You just looked at it.
Just like at home,
Sounding worse.
I was telling the panel at home he offers to sit on my face, opposed to my lap, and I tell him that's inappropriate with or without people around, and they have Craigslist for that if that's something you're really into.
You would know, wouldn't you?
I would know.
Yes.
So on to professional wrestling, and not the kind of professional wrestling Travis orders from the back of PWI magazines. There's a lot going on. It's Royal Rumble week. This is my favorite pay-per-view in professional wrestling. For some, it's WrestleMania. They love WrestleMania. It comes once a year. That's one more time than Travis does inside a woman.
Knew that was
But
coming.
it comes once a year.
It was the same way we were working there.
For me, it's the Royal Rumble. Even when I was a kid, I always looked forward to the Royal Rumble more than I did WrestleMania, just due to the intrigue of who's coming out next.
Plus with the Royal Rumble, I think part of the thing of it, like for you and I, we've always kind of been fans of, the jobbers, of the Adam Bombs and the Bastion Boogers of the wrestling world, and those guys don't make it to WrestleMania, but they're in the Rumble, and it's kind of cool to see, the guys that are kind of like the B-listers of the roster, the guys that are either just on their way out or, should have been on their way out a while ago and making an appearance.
Speaking of jobbers, before we move on, we could maybe have a moment of silence here for Iron Mike.
Iron Mike. We'll get to Iron Mike Sharpe. I'm glad you brought him up because we do need to talk about him, and we will get to that. Yes. And that's true. Like I love now that I'm older, watching the Rumble isn't quite the same, but it still brings me back to that time of that intrigue of who's coming through the curtain. Because it's unpredictable. Anybody can come through the curtain. They usually have a couple surprises every year now, and that's really exciting for me.
Yeah, I try to stay off the mark sites for the weekend.
But to that point, even with all the sites and stuff, sometimes a guy is a genuine surprise.
I think they go above and beyond now to counteract all the dirt sheets and have a couple guys. Last year they had Bubba Ray Dudley in the Rumble.
Boogeyman.
The Boogeyman, which is a weird one for me. Like,
he's a gimmicky. It's a good entrance. Right?
I would be more excited if like Mantar was in the Rumble last year.
He sold his hood though. He sold the thing for crack. I'm not bullshitting.
I know you're not.
On an aside, there's actually a funny story that I heard a few weeks ago with Chris Jericho. He was cutting a promo.
Oh, Mantar?
When he made his return, like when they have these guys do their surprises, like they kept him hidden in a bus all day. He couldn't hang out with all the boys and catering or anything like that. And then when it was finally his time to come out, he looks at the run sheet and his name's all over the run sheets all day. I was like, I sat in my fucking bus all day when everybody even saw the run sheet knew I was here and probably thought I was a dick hiding in my bus.
I think Chris Jericho has returned more than Bobby Royce is retired at that time. It seems like every 3 months Chris Jericho's returning to TV.
Remember, was it last year or 2 years ago where like Jake the Snake was heavily soliciting having his name put into the Rumble.
That's right.
Yeah, right after he completed the DDP yoga. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe that's what's going to happen this year. Maybe they're keeping that low pro.
Yeah, because he ended up being on Raw not too long after that. But he wanted one last shot in the Rumble.
He didn't do fuck all on Raw. He just made a stake on the Ambrose and that was it.
Oh, he didn't. I was going to say, I couldn't remember. Did he? I know he had the DDT, I think.
No,
he didn't wrestle on that.
No.
Okay.
But like
his latest snake.
A Jake or a few years ago, Kevin Nash as Diesel and stuff. That has more meaning than like if AJ Styles comes out, because I think for the mainstream fan, they want to see the Hacksaw Jim Duggan or the Bubba Ray Dudley, even though we'll groan when we see Hacksaw come out with the 2x4.
I personally love that stuff still.
Yeah, I mean it takes you back, but the guy's not going to make an impact. He's not going to win.
Nah, but maybe he should.
Yeah.
He should. Like we were talking about like how WWE has Raw brand, the SmackDown brand, NXT's now a brand. this is off topic of the Rumble, but I always thought it'd be a great idea for them to have like a touring Legends brand. They've invested so much money in these household names that draw huge houses on the independents. Why not run a WWE reunion tour on the D-Loop?
Good job.
Bring the jobbers back!
Another moment of silence for Mike Sharpe.
The price of gimmick has skyrocketed, so I don't know if they'd be able to afford that.
Or better yet, that'd be a good opportunity to bring local guys in each town and job them to
do an old school
superstar
taping.
Jobbing them all out to the head shrinkers and.
I saw some of those guys were still able to go. Like Road Dogg Jesse James was a guest on JBL Legends yesterday.
Yeah,
and that was a fascinating interview. But him and Badass did their little run. Was that about a year ago?
Well, there's not too many guys that are still working from the 80s, but WWE spans so many generations now. You could have a couple of them as special guests, some guys from the early 90s, late 90s. It'd probably pop a bigger number than a lot of the house shows.
You can get the Warlord in there. He's from. Warlord still
I know I'd go to a house show if the main event was like the Warlord versus Bushwhacker
versus Berserker.
Maybe all the boys in the business and nobody.
But then you can keep guys relevant, like Goldust or something. They could be the Legends thing and then make the occasional appearance on Raw or something.
Yeah, we can do a main event on those shows.
Yeah.
Back to the Rumble. Now that I'm an adult, I enjoy the Rumble because I get to gamble money on the Rumble. I get together with my friends. I think everybody does this. You throw some money in a pot and you get a certain amount of balls. If you're Travis Cole, either way, you get a certain amount of balls.
2, sometimes 4.
Yeah, who knows how many? As many as he wants.
Is that 3?
I think it's a part of the party.
Is that 3 or 4 references so far?
We're doing pretty good.
You're doing pretty good today. You're on fire.
You're on fire. So we get together. We all throw in say $10, or it used to start off like that. Now I like to risk more money and put like $10 a ball down, and get 5 or 6 options of winning and win a bigger pot. But I used to play that same game like as a kid, but without the money. And it'd be fun because I would get Eli and Jacob Blue, and that would excite me. I knew they weren't going to win the Rumble, but I was excited to have Eli and Jacob Blue, or have the Repo Man, or like in the night. I think
Max Moon, or.
But that was in the day when they announced the guys beforehand, because now we don't know who's going to be in there, right? There'll be some guy just like we've talked about before.
But the way it still works though is you you put your numbers 1 through 30 in a draw. So say there's 6 of us and we all get 5 numbers. You pass it around, taking one out number until you have your 5, and if your number ends up winning the Rumble, you win the pot. So it's completely luck.
So it's clear you want like 30 or 1 or like.
We played a similar game with shooters one year where you draw whatever numbers. And then, when your guy gets eliminated, that's your guy. When your guy gets eliminated, take a shot. So there's sometimes where guys
I had some rough years.
Bang, bang, bang. You guys go together, and you're doing 2 of those 3 or whatever kind of thing. And then we kind of mix it up where just the shots are in a different order. So you'll have your few sourpusses, but then you'll have like tequila with Tabasco in there. So you're like, fuck, don't. And they're all in line. Like the shooters are in line, right? You have about 5 lined up, and then the host of the party would kind of just line 5 more up when you're down to your last one. So you're just like, fuck, someone else's guy get it.
You're really hoping
mine, that one's up next. It puts some intrigue into it anyway.
It does.
So like if your ball comes out and out comes Santino Morelli, you're like, oh shit, because you know you're drinking. You're drinking the shit.
It gets like that too when you got the money on it. Like you get it, and like Funaki comes out, and you just get hot. You're like, it's like there's some money on the line. I think the last 5 years, I've never in the last 5 or 6 years, I've not won 1 year, but my good number has always gotten to the last 2, so I'm always on edge, hoping it's the year I'm going to do it. So I have to win 6 Rumbles to win my money back. But the most controversial year for me was the John Cena Batista finish. They did a double finish to the floor. Who ended up going over? Was Cena or was it Batista?
It was Cena.
It was Cena. So I had Batista, and they went over the top rope at the same time. But if you watch the footage, Cena fucking touched first, but that wasn't the finish. So Vince came out. That was the infamous. He blew his quads out, and he changed the finish. And I'm hot. I'm throwing shit around. So I just got ripped off $100 or whatever it might have been because Batista clearly won, but it wasn't the booked finish, and they had to fix it on the fly. So
see, I don't know if I could do the. I've never gambled on a Rumble before.
What happened in the Brett and Lex case? You split the pot, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah, I was too young. I think I was 6 at that time or 5, so I wasn't quite there yet.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do it because I get excited. Like if a guy like Funaki came out, I'd be excited. But if he was my number, I'd get hot. So it'd kind of ruin the Rumble for me.
It's like an emotional struggle.
Yeah,
that's what betting is.
Right.
Only wrestlers would be dumb enough to bet on professional wrestling.
You know, remember the gimmick where you can.
That's right. It's like we know better than everybody it's a work, and we're still putting our money down, trying to win money on the winner of a professional wrestling match.
Only for Mania, you can bet on Vegas sites, on Sports Interactions based out of Toronto. That's the one. Like I bet on football and UFC and stuff on it, but. You can bet on Mania. It's got odds and everything like that, And the year when Lesnar beat Taker 2 years ago, he was paying like 17-1 or something like that.
Wow.
Anyway, so if you threw $10, you'd win 170.
But you won the Powerball. That's what I would do. If I won that $1 billion, the Powerball. We talked about that the other day. I'd be betting against the Harlem Globetrotters. And stuff. I'd spend that $1 billion
just to change the line.
In days.
I think this year I'm going to be calling up my friends on the writing team and trying to. I don't know if they can do that or not, but I'm going to try.
Just be like, hey, here are my picks. Let me know if I should put money.
See, how does that work though? Because if you weren't on the WWE creative team, what's stopping you from placing a bet to a friend? And
you could do that. You could do that, but here's the gimmick. Like there was one weekend I was in Minneapolis to watch a football game, and before I left, it was an hour or two before the game, and I thought, fuck, I'm gonna throw some money on a different game, and I logged into my account, fine. And I just went to throw like $10 on a Bears Packers game. And it's like you were in a region it can tell by whatever tower you're playing from, and it's like you're in a region where gambling's not allowed, so you can basically only place these bets from Canada or Nevada. I guess.
I would imagine there's some form of like illegality.
Yeah, you can't parlay.
It's just like a coach, for example, in basketball. He can't bet on the because say he might know that someone on his team is injured, and then he's suddenly like, oh well, I'll go bet on the other team. So like if you're involved in the sport, you're not allowed to bet on it.
You can't.
That's defeating the question because sport is legitimate.
Yeah.
But professional wrestling's not. No. So if I have a good friend on the writing team, how is anyone going to find out if he's in Connecticut? Gives me the results.
Like currently, right now, they have odds up. You can place bets on all the odds.
But they change on the day. But they change on the day though. So remember, Meltzer was saying that a few months ago, saying that all of a sudden the day of the event, the odds would change because they thought
they're always changing though.
Someone was leaking the
last year, like they added The Rock on Saturday or Sunday morning because they had an Instagram post that he was in Philly. And they're like, and then they made Rock the big favorite all of a sudden, and it changes all day. But
so you have to place it close to.
Well, kind of. I mean, the thing that they do to kind of minimize the risk of running with someone that's on the inside is just like low limits.
Yeah, they don't
so they'll put
like
$20 or like $50 max.
You're not getting rich.
Yeah, I think it's $50 max. You can't do combo bets, like you can't do parlays, so you can't do multipliers.
So you might be able to clean up like a couple grand at best.
At best.
And again, like they might not find out, but they might not find out, but then they might find out down the road.
Same time, these companies are making millions every weekend on.
Well, if we're talking about gambling on wrestling, I'm gonna put you boys on the spot right now. There's 5 of us here, which would mean 6 numbers each in the Rumble.
All right.
Let's all put down $10 a ball.
Okay.
$60. That's a big investment,
okay,
but a big pot. And during one of our commercial breaks, we'll get 30 numbers and we'll draw them out here, so we know what our numbers are. We'll post them on the podcast, and we'll see who's got the money next week.
I'm down.
You in?
I'm in. In like Flynn.
It's all luck. You don't have to worry about it, man.
$60 is a good payoff, but $300 is a good.
$60 is, I'd have to work like 6 of your shows to make that much.
I don't pay you that much.
I said I worked 6. That's $10 a show.
Yeah.
You drop yourself out even further.
Dropping you up. Paying up your work.
This is fascinating, isn't it, folks?
Before we move on from the Rumble, and we'll get our numbers to be drawn out here, who's the prediction? Who's winning the Rumble this year? Let's go down the line. Who's taking it?
I'll start with Brock, although yesterday's Raw left a very sour taste in my mouth with how they pretty much just absolutely dropped him out to the Wyatts. So I'll stick with Brock just because
They gotta make him look vulnerable at some point, right? He can't be.
I guess so. I mean, like, he's been booked as a monster, and then you have the Wyatts who have been
But there's 4
constantly.
of them, right?
Well, yeah, that's true. I'll stick with Brock.
They're typically only beaten when the odds are even. Like when it's 3-on-1 or 4-on-1, they nobody's able to take them, nor should they be able to.
No, realistically.
Kev?
Fuck, like it's. I kind of think something and then I see something that makes you not think that. And
Like the betting lines?
yeah, well, not the betting lines, just they
Triple H is a favorite. FYI.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking was Triple H, and then Reigns would chase Triple H into Mania. I'm going to stick with Triple H.
I'm going out on a limb because I'm thinking ahead to the main event at WrestleMania. Undertaker wins the Rumble, faces Brock at WrestleMania, and then he retires.
I like that.
Didn't they have the rubber match though? Wasn't that SummerSlam?
Technically,
Yeah, I guess.
But Brock got the victory, right, with that. After some,
So you
he
think
got
he-
that one after that.
so
It
you-
wasn't it
Hell in a Cell.
Hell in a Cell,
So you
yeah.
think he'll retire as champion?
I think he'll retire. Well, no, I don't think he'll retire as champion. I think Brock wins, goes over again, and then Undertaker gives the belt, shakes the hand, walks away.
It's
That would
interesting.
be hell of the main event for Texas.
That's it.
well, that's really good.
Business.
I'm gonna go with one of my personal favorites, Triple H. I think that's the way they want to go right now. So I think that's gonna be it.
Yeah, well, it is setting up the main event for WrestleMania. Texas, man, I like deep down to think that the Berserker is going to be a surprise entrant this year and surprise everybody, but knowing that's probably unlikely, I'm going to jump on the train here and say Triple H. So Roman Reigns gets fucked at the Rumble, build up
Chases him into Mania.
chases him into Mania, gets his big crowning moment he was robbed of last year.
Yeah.
The only thing I think about that is, I mean, I think Triple H should be a great winner, but I don't think he wants that stigma that put himself over that huge.
He's done it his whole career.
Not I mean, yeah, he did it against Sting, but I think he took heat for that. I think, Sting came out of retirement to lose to Triple H.
Who cares if he takes heat? He's in charge.
Yeah, who's got answer
And
to?
Who's gonna give him heat?
And when it comes down to it, it's best for business is what they like to say a lot, and that's what they want right now is Roman Reigns is starting to really get over, and I think that would put it over the top. So that makes sense.
They kept him off television for a long time now.
That might-
selling that beating.
That might make it work too, because like you said, it would catch heat because everybody's in on the business now. So they go, oh, that Cox putting himself
Well, you buy
over
tickets.
again. So there's really going to be resentment towards him and a real push for Roman Reigns to capture it back. And
Especially if he doesn't defend the title between now and Mania, and they put Roman through. If maybe they do an elimination chamber match at the next pay-per-view, then he has to wrestle.
You can see Vince shaking his hand and hugging him, and everybody being so happy that he's the champ. And he's going to defend. No, he's not going to defend.
if it's not Triple H, there's going to be some kind of swerve where somebody then aligns with the authority, like turns heel and joins the authority to make sure Roman doesn't win, to then set that guy up and Roman Reigns.
I thought that was going to be Jericho.
But I think you're
I thought
right.
Jericho was going for a turn. I sensed it yesterday on Raw.
Is that a main event in 2000?
No, but a thing to screw as an
They put it
authority
in
figure to
place.
screw
Yeah.
to screw
Like
like
planted that seed.
yeah. And then allowing, that could work at allowing Triple H to win. But I think that we're going to see a retirement match for Undertaker in Texas.
I think he's still got some gas in him.
I think he does too. But I mean, that's a selling feature. I think Ric Flair had some gas too.
He still did a couple. I think he did a tour this year, didn't
Good.
he?
Yeah.
Look
Undertaker
good.
in
Look good.
Mexico, like,
Where do you go from here with him though? Like 100,000 people in his home
straight to the
state.
bank. Keeps making money.
No. But like for someone who has as much money as he does, like if maybe that's what motivated, maybe what isn't. But just from a career standpoint, 100,000 people, the main event in your home state, like he said, if they do the retirement match, with Brock Lesnar, one of the biggest names they have like today or in the last 15 years, like what's bigger than that? Like where does he go from there? What do they promote?
I think
next?
Brock Lesnar beating him at WrestleMania again doesn't.
Unless Brock comes out on top and Undertaker takes him then retires. Don't know. I think Undertaker is going to figure in on Sunday in the Royal Rumble. I think.
Yeah, I could see him winning it and going to wrestle something. What about that Cena? No, Cena's out for now. Is he going to be back for WrestleMania?
Who knows?
If he's back, it'd literally be like a game time, like ready to go
See,
thing.
like,
Super
Lesnar,
hot shot.
Undertaker. I don't know if that appeals to me in the sense that if Undertaker loses, he's already lost at WrestleMania to Brock, so it's not unique.
Yeah.
And if Undertaker beats Brock and retires, Brock still has to show up next day and be the monster he's always been, not being able to avenge that loss. So I don't think anybody comes out ahead.
I don't know. Do you?
It's interesting.
I don't know if Brock needs the run.
As bad as it sounds, like, is there foresight to that though? Like, are they thinking like who gets the rub from it, or are they thinking what's the biggest match we can put on that's going to get 100,000 people's asses in the seats?
Yeah, like what's the ticket count? Anybody know?
I'm not sure.
Are they
honest.
half sold? 60? 70?
I'd be
I
curious to
imagine
find
that'd
out.
be close.
I'm trying
Is
to.
there any,
Yeah.
is there any chance of Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania this year?
Yeah, we're talking about it.
He denied it though.
Because he's been wanting to do one last match for an eternity.
I don't know.
There's your
I don't
rumble
know
entrance.
There's your
Rumble
there-
entrance, yeah.
Who do you put him with that's like valuable enough of a match? Like there's so many like the matches that you think you'd see like him and Cena like
Earthquake's passed, but Tempo's still alive.
Tugboat, yeah.
Who do you have wrestle Hulk Hogan if he's only got one match in him?
He could wrestle
You gotta
anybody.
find someone,
if they-
yeah.
They were trying
No,
to
but they're
bring
gonna want
Shawn
to milk
back.
it.
Jericho.
Yeah,
Sorry?
Jericho,
They were
yeah.
trying to bring Shawn back.
Shawn Michaels.
Yeah, from what I read, but he's adamantly saying no.
Yeah,
He could always do like a
Stacks.
big Legends match like that, and
He'll be there.
maybe it's not like the big singles encounter, but if you had a Hogan, a Michaels, a Flair, like these guys that are never around anymore, getting that one big match, you do a tag or a 6-man and kind of make it unique to celebrate WrestleMania as an event.
They did that Rumble that one year at it.
The gimmick battle royal.
Gimmick battle
Gimmick-
royal, yeah.
They need more of that.
They
That
do,
was
that
great.
was awesome.
The Goon.
I imagine you were just sitting there as a kid, just like
Oh,
a
I
kid in a
loved
candy
it.
store.
loved
WrestleMania
it.
17.
I was at Phil Street Station, loaded out of my mind watching that. That was awesome.
That was right around the time like WrestleCrap was really popular
Yeah.
too, so like I was really up to date with all those guys.
Lalo was there.
That would have been what, a couple years before you broke in, hey? Like
Yeah,
12,
Repo
13
Man
years
was
old.
there.
We talked about Mike Sharpe, and I'm glad that was brought up because we would like to talk a lot more about him. A lot of people remember Mike Sharpe. They go, "Oh, he was one of the more prominent jobbers from that time," and kind of say it in a derogatory way. But Mike Sharpe was incredibly talented. Like he was a top worker in a lot of territories,
Oh, yeah.
and due to being such a good hand, he was instilled into that position to make the Stars look good at a higher level than the local jabroni would going through those towns.
Yeah, there was 3 or 4 jobbers that they kind of brought on the road with them, right? Like him.
I think he was full time with the company.
Yeah, he was.
he
Yeah,
was.
him, Horowitz, Reno Riggins, like guys like that kind of went on the road and just did,
Terry Gibbs.
Terry Gibbs, that's right. Yeah, and they're just constant jobbers, and then they'd round up whatever locals kind of thing.
He was. I would say he was probably the top like heel job. Like for getting
Yeah,
a baby face. So if they wanted to get a baby face over,
Him or Barry Horowitz.
And he wasn't always like if you look like the mid '80s stuff, like they were putting him over on some guys. It was at a time where they would put some of the job guys over on the other jobbers, so
yeah,
it meant
sure, once in
something
a
more.
while, yeah.
Yeah, house shows especially too.
Yeah.
I started watching Iron Mike when he was in Vancouver.
I was gonna ask if you actually had a chance to work with him up there.
I never worked with him, but I watched him as a kid. My grandfather actually preferred the Vancouver wrestling over the AWA. So every Saturday at 5 o'clock or something, we'd be watching Ron Morier and Gene Kiniski, Eric Froelich, Don Leo Jonathan, all those guys, and Iron Mike Sharpe. And then
Yeah.
they had that continuity when Iron Mike Sharpe. And then in the later years when Al Tonko took it over, I saw the debut of Road Warrior Hawk on that. I think he was like on for 2 shows or one television taping worth. And then of course Tonko put himself over and put all the kids over. But going back before, there was a ton of guys on there. They had the
Yeah.
famous Duration match on there, and watching guys like again I mentioned Eric Froelich, but yeah, that's where I first saw Iron Mike Sharpe, and that had that thing on his arm, and
Yeah.
that was the gimmick, and he was mean and tough and rough, and yeah, and it was. I found myself when Maple Leaf Wrestling first came on, replacing the AWA on which is now Global Television on Saturdays at 6 o'clock, and they'd have Iron Mike. At those days, you thought maybe Iron Mike still could go over. Like you thought it was. I mean, we don't have squash matches anymore on WWE television.
Yeah.
Maybe on Superstars or
yeah,
something.
no,
Maybe
they don't really do it there anymore.
Well, they put the Ascension.
Yeah.
Like by the time I was kind of not necessarily clued in, but like enough to put together a thought as a child, he was kind of like weaning off of television. But I'd always watch my old Coliseum home videos, and I always thought it was bizarre that he was like a job. He was a large dude. He was a good worker.
I think he got in like a Survivor Series match or something.
How
Yeah, he was.
how old was he when he like started full time with WWF though? Was
He was there like
older then?
he was there in the '80s, like early '80s, mid '80s.
I was disappointed there wasn't a package on him yesterday. I
Yeah.
mean, I think did he die yesterday morning or in the
This is
Sunday
before
night?
Raw, yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they just had a mention of him. I think that he was worthy of. I mean, I know it was Martin Luther King Day in the States,
Right.
but maybe it should have had, because I mean they talked about Lemmy from Motorhead,
Right.
Almost like they put him over more than Iron Mike.
Yeah.
right. That's fair.
Yeah, like when they do the tag job matches, like he'd be the stronger one on the
Yeah,
team, and
exactly.
the other, like the local guy,
Yeah.
would be the one that would do the
Get the
job
fucking
and stuff
meeting,
like
yeah.
that. I always appreciated like how vocal he was. Like,
Yeah.
you could watch him, and he was like, it was entertaining. Like it was
Yeah.
real.
He's calling spots now. If you go back and it's almost like he was calling spots.
Yeah.
Elbow.
Yeah.
He hit the guy with an elbow.
Like in this day and age, you would do that kind of stuff. They go, oh, that's too indie and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But it was entertaining. Like
Yeah.
just to watch, like you would just sit there and you chuckle because it was funny.
And he's so overblown with the whoa. And he
Yeah.
did-
I see a lot of Rob Stardom in Mike Sharpe with the way Rob Stardom does his
the other way
heel.
around. see a lot of Iron Mike Sharpe and Rob stuff.
Yeah, that's moving along. There's some other controversial issues going on. Mike Sharpe passed, but Sonny's career continues to be dying a slow death, unfortunately. I think it's great. I love Sonny. I have since I was a
offer in the bank right now.
Such a kid.
So from what I gathered, and I really appreciated what I did look at, I guess somebody said on her Twitter or something like that, like, "What's up, my nigga?"
Something like that.
And she responded with, "What's up, my nigger?"
She put the R on hers?
Yeah. And it blew up.
Maybe
Everyone's,
autocorrected,
you're a racist.
Someone sent me the article, and I believe
Mine autocorrects. Like if I try to put bigger, mine autocorrects it to the N word all of a
Is that
sudden.
because you use it so often?
Yeah, it's in my vernacular.
So everybody's jumped on her, and she's a racist. It's inappropriate. Is this and the person she was speaking to was not of a black ethnic?
No, it wasn't a fan either. I think it was a friend or something. Someone sent me an article that listed all the tweets. That's where I heard about this. And
So
I think it was actually
is this cause for she should have been more careful, or is it people in the generation of I need to bitch about everything?
Well, I think it could be both, Ken. She probably should have been more careful, but
probably shouldn't. Throw that word around if you're white, especially, but. At the same time, whatever. She's a fucking train wreck. Worse shit comes out of her fucking mouth, right? Like, who gives a shit? Like, it's not like Barack Obama saying it. It's fucking Sonny saying it.
But it goes back to what we talked about before. Yes, it might have been inappropriate, but she didn't say it with the intent to offend or hurt. It was just
just off the cuff.
Play and And I've got countless friends of many ethnic backgrounds, and it's common that they'll use stereotypical or racial slang just in humor because it's meant playfully and not.
It's a joke.
She wasn't going on there saying
They stink.
Stupid.
So, Rob, I can ask you, being of an ethnic colored background, yourself personally, is that like when you're with your friends or people is it something that you take offense to, or is it a matter of like, these are my friends, it's acceptable, or is it like, no, like how?
I think it's all a matter of personal preference.
And context.
And I mean, like, especially within our ethnic community, if something's said, it's supposed to be stereotypical, but it's obviously a joke, everyone understands it, so.
Like when Russell Peters does it in his comedy routine, he's making fun of himself, or you guys, But you just can't throw the word out.
No,
you can't. You can't. But to that point you said earlier, I remember a couple of years ago just throwing out something stupid. There was Justin Bieber, and he was embarrassing himself on television, and I put something on there. And people I didn't even know, I put a hashtag, what it might have been American Music Awards or something. I got heat for, what are you talking about? And personal insults and slagging for hitting Justin Bieber, right? Come on. I just don't say nothing, I just retweet stuff,
Could have been fans or whatever.
Oh, it was, and that's what it is. But it's the same thing. You break down people's throats.
Now here's a twist on this. We were talking about this off air. Is one time, in the mid '90s heyday that was WWF, Sonny and Chris Candido they ran out of gimmick one night, right? And so Ahmed Johnson was making a little more coin in those days than they were, so he had a little more gimmick on hand. And then so they went and banged on his roof.
What do you mean by gimmick, Kevin Cannon?
White lightning.
Party favors?
Oh, okay.
Happy powder.
Blow.
So not like gimmick as in skip and zip was a gimmick.
No. We're talking about cocaine here.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Got
so
it.
confused.
So anyhow, so banged on his room and said like, hey, can you want to do some of your gimmick with us? And then he's like, yeah, you let me feed Sonny, and we got ourselves a deal. And they kind of both were like, yeah, sure. And that was that.
Wow.
Yeah. And apparently then Candido was hot the next day because she ended up sleeping in his room, and that wasn't part of the deal or something. some fucking thing. Yeah, like it's you can dig it up.
Of all things to be
Google a few of those keywords, and I'm sure like whoever's version of the story will fucking come up. But yeah, like so I don't know if maybe since she had that romantic encounter with Ahmed Johnson, if that excuses her a little more than the average white girl from Middle America. I don't know.
Romantic.
Touching on the race for rap music, I love hip hop. I love rap music. that racial word will be used in songs very frequently.
Sure, if you hear the word
So-
trigger, you know what the next line's in.
So if I'm singing along to the song word for word the way it's produced, am I being racist?
There was an episode of Blackish last season. The kid said that he was listening, and all of a sudden it was in school, and he was doing. I can't remember what the song was. It might have been. That doesn't matter. But the kid was black, and and he's in the school, and he was doing the thing, and there was like a lip sync or something, and the music stopped, and the word came out, and everybody was just outraged. So. Don't do it. It's like
Right.
roll up your window. Don't sing along.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's if you're singing along to a song. Depends what kind of company you're in, right? You know, if it's just us all in a car going to wherever for a show, who gives a shit, right? You know, but if you're doing it on a live podcast, yeah, you might get some.
So it's a matter of being conscious of your surroundings.
Yeah,
is
I
what
think
it
that's-
boils down to.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
think about
fair.
it too. Like if you're
So if you're going to be a racist, keep it to yourself.
Yeah,
Don't
if
put
you're-
it on Twitter.
Be a closet racist.
if you're hanging out with your nieces and nephews, for example, you're going to be a little bit more conscious of what you say and do. Most
No.
people, well, most people
I
are.
know. Black
I don't
nephews.
know. I don't.
I mean, any kind of like anything in
No.
general, you're gonna be more conscious
Well,
of what you
influential.
say or do. So
Because like when
anytime
you
you're
started to
around-
swear as a kid, like in grade 3 and grade 4, it'd be started common words, and then you didn't go home and say, pass the fucking potatoes to mom.
Exactly.
you have some sort of
That's it,
like restraint,
Yeah, right.
and like you would think it would click in her head that I'm
Right.
posting this publicly.
Yeah,
It's
I'm a public
probably
figure.
not a good idea.
Well, fuck.
Whether or not you agree with like what she said or not is irrelevant.
But that goes back to the whole thing I was saying
But
earlier. It's
it's
fucking
fucking
sunny.
sunny.
Yeah. Like,
She doesn't have a Legends deal to cancel, does she?
Actually, that brings me to the second part of the story. She's disassociating herself with WWE. She's got her Hall of Fame ring up for auction,
oh man.
and a pornography company has offered to purchase the ring for $100,000.
Yeah, of course.
Oh.
With the trade-off being she needs to produce a sex tape for them. She can choose the partner. I'm volunteering and willing to do it for free. But it's got to be
Rock your
done.
rascal.
It's got to be done within the next
the next-
6 weeks or something.
No,
like
it's
that.
gonna be like in the next week or
6
two,
weeks.
apparently, because
Well,
they
what
want to
if she-
release it in time for WrestleMania.
What if she's menstruating? Like, can't make it then. Like, fuck, they gotta give her a little
Yeah,
bit
that's-
of that.
I'm sure that's a thing.
That was
That is, that's a, that is,
Yeah.
that was the part that I found entertaining, was that they wanted to make sure it was produced by WrestleMania, because there's a ton of
she's
crossover, I
probably past
guess.
menopause anyway.
Right.
She can get her fucking rag no more.
How old is she now?
Oh, she's got
41.
What?
Really?
Yes, because when
No.
She was a kid.
when she got inducted into the Hall of Fame, it was like she was the youngest ever at like 37 or 38.
Oh, fuck.
I think Trish like maybe beat her out or something a couple years later,
Oh.
but she was like she's maybe 42,
Oh,
43.
Christ.
tops.
Okay, well then.
Yeah.
Maybe she probably
Yeah.
still fucking
I remember that being a thing when she got inducted, that she was like, super young.
44?
Okay.
44, 45?
I can't see
We get
any
43.
of that, yeah.
We're getting a cue, 43.
this begs the question: which would she respond and come to Winnipeg for? If you booked her as a wrestling promoter, or if you booked her as a pornography producer? Which do you think would cost more?
As a wrestling promoter or a pornographer, I don't
Bobby
think he has.
I reached
I
out.
think he has 100 grand.
But yeah, didn't
Bobby tried to book her one time. Her and
Yeah.
Candido, I think, and they
They
still
no-showed,
Yeah,
yeah.
no-showed,
I reached
yeah.
out to her, I want to say 4 or 5, maybe even less than that, but that was right around the time she started to get into that legal trouble where it seemed like she'd be arrested or something.
Oh, yeah.
So it was a question if she could cross the border at that
Oh,
point.
fuck, I guess, yeah.
But
Let's do that.
to me,
Like, she'd need to come for a tour, like, not just, like, one show, too. Just
Oh,
so,
yeah.
like, the boys could all take round out of her reach. Like,
We have to get some gimmick.
yeah. Oh, fuck, yeah. That'd be it. You'd have to get Dick Blood in there, for sure.
oh jeez.
He'd have to be last, too. He'd fucking ruin her for everyone else.
Well, she did Ahmed Johnson. I don't know
I
if
guess
Dick Blood's
all
not Ahmed
fuck.
Johnson.
Nah, they're probably pretty goddamn close.
Throwing a hot dog down the hallway.
I guess we'll find out if she produces this video. We were watching one of the, I think it was like SummerSlam 97, and she was incredibly hot.
Such a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And she has to, I would probably say, have to be the hottest
Oh,
woman
remember when she went
in
like with the
business.
Godwins and shit, like that whole like.
Oh no, she was doing her and Sable were doing. They were giving away a house.
Oh yeah, well that was
And
in
like
the house.
they
That
tried
was
they
SummerSlam.
tried phoning, or no, they were giving away money. It was SummerSlam.
Yeah,
It wasn't the in your house gimmick.
where they gave away a house.
Yeah, it's like they tried like 4 or 5 different.
Todd Pettengill wasn't available.
It was such a work too, because like they would call a phone number and nobody would answer. Then they called a second phone number and nobody answered. Then they called the third and they're like, "Are you watching SummerSlam right now?" And he's
Vince's voice.
"Hello." But no, they're like, "Are you watching SummerSlam right now?" And the guy's just like, "Nope." and they're like, "Well, why the hell not?" And he's like, "My cable company doesn't cover it, or it doesn't have it, or something like that."
I had to go down to video and
Get a box.
pick up a box and rent the fucker.
But they had to call like 6 different numbers before they could give away this money.
Sable was hot then too.
Oh yeah, both
Yeah.
incredible. I remember like
Cat.
the teenage Danny Duggan high-fived myself when Lita was here a couple of years ago, and I got to go pick her up from the airport because she was
I didn't
definitely.
get that email. Like everybody else, you get an email. Who can pick up this guy? Who can pick up Steiner? Who can pick up this guy? I didn't get that email. Who can pick up Lita?
For some reason, my schedule was open for that one actually. And I was able to go down and do it, and that was
happened to be.
it just so happened
What
to
a
be
coincidence.
free, and like that. That was
Who can pick up
nice.
Vader? Who can pick these? All these guys.
It's really funny you tell that story actually, because that same year I came in for that show for you in Winnipeg when I was still living in Calgary, and Lita was booked in Calgary the next night, and I was working that show as well.
Did you mind a clubber?
No.
Of course not.
Well, what the fuck?
Kidding? Feels a guy, mate.
I wasn't on the same flight as her. My flight got in like a half hour before hers did. So I remember though there was another talent coming in. I think it was Christopher Daniels, but and I remember like there was a crew message talking about who can pick up these guys or whatever, and everyone was like jumping on to pick up Lita or what have you. And it's like, nope, I got it. I'm gonna be in the airport already. Like my flight gets in like 20 minutes before her. So I'm pretty sure I had heat that day because everyone wanted to pick up Lita, but I was already at the airport.
Who
with
can
her,
pick up Dream?
I had to wait for like 2 hours to pick her up because she got stuck in line behind the Wu-Tang Clan that was coming in for a concert that same night, and I guess a bunch of them got denied.
Bunch of music
So
word on
really-
the airplane got denied.
But for the amount of time I spent observing Lita's work in photographs as a teenager, it was
Her work in photographs.
it was a nice
Nickelback
checklist.
song.
But I would say as great as the Lita experience was, I think Sunny would top that for me because she was probably my first real wrestling
Fucking
love.
booker, man.
Yeah, she can't get across the border.
Oh,
For sure.
You go to North Dakota a lot.
Yeah.
Why can't we have a CWE show in North Dakota?
You can't have a CWE
Put her in the
show.
trunk and drive her up.
Maybe Mercer could book her.
All right, 3 issues we're gonna fire off here quickly before taking our first break. Jim Ross got announced as the replacement for Mauro Ranallo as the American commentator for New Japan Pro Wrestling. So he's back on national television and he's doing it for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Does that have any interest in anybody?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jim Ross is one of the best play-by. He just puts a lot of emotion into it, and he does a good job of getting everyone over. Like a lot of people think, and well, coincidentally, here we are. But a lot of people think like, oh fuck, how hard is it? You just sit there and you call spots. No, you're selling the fucking product, man. And Jim Ross did a great job of making everybody seem like they had a fucking legitimate chance of winning every fucking match, no matter how much of a goddamn joke it was.
I have a caveat on that. I think you're absolutely right, but he's just doing voiceover work for him out of California. He's not going to do the shows live.
Correct.
There is a distinct difference
Oh yeah.
with JR's work on Coliseum home video, recalling a match,
Right.
and him doing it live, right? You and I have done voiceover work too, but we don't watch the match before.
No.
We know what we got to do and stuff like that because we need to have that genuine emotion.
Exactly,
But
yeah.
but JR's gonna be calling tapes that are months old, right? So I think the guy's got great talent. It's gonna be great to hear him, but I don't think it's gonna be as good as classic.
I thought the Jim Ross, Matt Stryker Wrestle Kingdom team from last year was a lot stronger than the commentary team for Wrestle Kingdom this year in English. My only, I don't even want to say critique because I'm nobody to critique Jim Ross, but for me as a fan, the only disconnect to me was I could tell he wasn't familiar with the product. He sold it incredibly. You probably wouldn't know any different, but
But if you know what to listen for.
me being familiar with the business, I could tell that he was being fed why these guys were
Yeah.
special, and he didn't know from personally watching and following.
right.
So I kind of felt like a disconnect that he was just being fed a run sheet,
Being
opposed to
told.
just being able to sincerely, pour his emotion into it the way he's famous for. So
like how,
maybe with time, like watching the product week to week as he does commentary, you'll be able to get into that natural groove and be more familiar with everybody and their story, opposed to just doing a one-off spot
From what I
show.
understood, he's going out to LA 6 to 8 times a year, and they're gonna do like 6 shows a day.
Oh, wow.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it? Who's he calling you?
That I didn't hear. I heard that today on satellite radio.
Okay.
I know
Yeah, I'd have to check the
It's interesting you mentioned that because I would imagine part of the reason why him and Matt Stryker flowed so well is because even though everyone has a different commentating style, they both have recently, in the last 5-10 years, done commentary for WWE.
Yeah, and it makes a difference to know the person.
Sure.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, this year was Kevin Kelly and Matt Stryker, and I enjoyed it, and Yoshitatsu as well. I enjoyed it a lot, but that's the style that Kevin Kelly's calling now versus what Matt Stryker does with Lucha Underground is completely different. So, so maybe that's why you felt more of a connection with JR and Matt the year before than you did this year, because their styles kind of meshed a little bit better because they've worked similar that WWE style before. So
Speaking of announcers, does anybody know why Byron Saxton is on both shows, Raw and SmackDown?
he is. Yes.
Like, why? Like, what does he add? Like, yeah, but like, is it a diversity thing?
Something
Going back
fresh,
to,
They're just trying
he's like,
shit.
yeah, like, what's wrong with using
I think
Booker or something?
I think they're just trying shit out.
Yeah,
The both shows. I don't understand both shows.
They've got quite a few guys that they're using right now. In developmental, they're moving guys around a lot too. They've Tom Phillips, I believe, was up on Raw or SmackDown doing some stuff, but I heard he just went back to NXT. He's working. They were doing a 3-man booth down there for a while. Now they're going back to the classic 2-man booth down there. So he's doing.
I like when
commentary
Regal
down
was
there
doing
again.
it.
Yeah.
He was
I like
good.
when Vince McMahon was doing it.
Oh,
He
Oh, we love it. I love it so much.
I don't know. I don't remember who it was, but I remember right before it became NXT, FCW had a horrible fucking announce team, like watching matches on YouTube, and whoever the fuck was announcing, I remember looking at who it was. It was names I recognized, but I couldn't tell you now. They have, and I was thinking like, fuck. I hope these guys don't get called.
I think a lot of cases, though, I don't know for sure, but probably back then it was trying guys in different roles, and it might have been guys who don't have broadcasting experience.
Yeah,
you know, Tom Phillips, Rich Brennan, Scott Stanford, all these guys had Renee Young,
Kyle Edwards.
Arno Cal.
Kyle Edwards, yeah.
They all have like sports backgrounds or some sort of broadcasting background, so I think that's probably helping them in a lot of ways with how to position guys now that they're hiring people specifically for that job, as opposed to, well, this guy's not working out as a wrestler, so let's try him as a
Throw him in the booth.
commentator.
Boy, Renee Young's stock is up high though in that company.
Yeah, she's doing great there. And Corey Graves is actually very entertaining as well.
Yes.
Watching the
I
last couple NXT.
I find him hard to watch because that neck tattoo. Like, but when I first initially I got turned off that neck tattoo. I don't mind. I'm nothing against people with tattoos, but that neck one, because it almost gives me a gag reflex in terms of like I don't know. Like I'm squeamish. Like I'm a squeamish guy. But the more I watch him and I see him and I see those features because I got the network, I like the guy. I like the guy's voice. I like the guy. He holds himself well. He's never at a loss for words. I was watching something on Botchmania with Booker T. Couldn't remember the match of the year, and this guy couldn't sell anything. He couldn't even ad-lib, right?
Yeah.
Where Corey,
And you tell he kind of models his way after Bobby Heenan a little bit.
I think you're right.
I get it with Jesse Ventura too with him actually a lot.
And Bobby, those are two of the best. But Bobby Heenan was the best.
The way that because he's kind of a heel commentator, but he'll bury the heels sometimes too if he thinks they're doing something stupid, which is something that he kind of calls it straight up. He's still got his heel bias, but like it very much reminds me of Jesse Ventura watching him, and I enjoy it a lot because I love Ventura, I love Heenan, McMahon, obviously.
Well, in WWF,
are my favorites.
not when Ventura went to WCW, Heenan went to WCW.
We need to take a quick commercial break so our cameraman can get things rolling and rocking here. So listen, we're going to have a 2-break episode because we have a couple more things to talk about before we jump into Dave Petro's career. So we'll be right back.
Give your body the edge in one click with musclesbymyers.com. We have sports supplements, vitamins and minerals for all lifestyles and levels of fitness. And call or email for free one-on-one guidance. Smart buyers shop at Myers and musclesbymyers.com.
And we are back. This thing is flowing. Normally we're talking to our guests and wrapping things up, but we're not even starting your career yet because there's so much else going on. We're going to be here all night, Dave Petro.
Hey, I'm 51 years old. It's past my bedtime.
So we're gonna fire
Somebody
through
sent me the message, 9 o'clock. I was like, 9 o'clock?
It was at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
a couple quick issues, and we're gonna draw for the Rumble. We got the generator. The latest news on the AJ Styles Bullet Club front is that AJ Styles is not gonna be in the Rumble this Sunday, but he'll be debuting on Raw on Monday, and the others will end up following suit in NXT once their contracts in Japan expire.
Huh. Well, I think that kind of becomes a more common theme a little more too, where you see guys not so much debut at the pay-per-view anymore because they want to. The pay-per-views usually the numbers don't move for the most part based on who's on them, or who's debuting on them, kind of thing. I think you get a little more of a spike though, and that kind of goes back to the whole like even going back to the '90s. You know what I mean? Like everything was so episodic that you didn't want to miss an episode. You know what? Oh fuck, like Mike Awesome showed up on WCW this week and I didn't fucking watch it. Who's gonna show up next week? I better fucking watch it this week. And
Right.
Mike Awesome showing up. Who the fuck else is gonna show up?
When we talk about this, and they obsess on that radio program Busted Open about the ratings, but people get their television, their information in so many different ways. Like, we're not going to see it, dating myself, when MASH had the final episode, right? Or Seinfeld had the final episode, these record ratings. But other than the Super Bowl, maybe the Academy Awards, those live, real events that are just like either you watch it or you don't. Like, I mean, you could PVR it, of course. But think about the WWE Network. I have the WWE Network, and on my tablet, I can watch Raw the next day pretty much, or SmackDown and stuff. Right? These guys, they're sharing, and kids these days, some of them don't even have cable.
No, you
right?
stream it or
They stream it,
right?
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't even think that that's anything to worry about. I mean, I know they measure it in terms of social media and things like that. Or maybe even network buys, but I don't know if they're even.
No,
I know that there's a certain percentage that obsess about the ratings, and that generates commercial dollars from revenue. But I don't know. I mean, I don't think you're going to see that when Raw versus Nitro and 6.7.3.
And they don't adjust for that when they're talking about it. I actually saw a list not too long ago. It was the list of the highest, most watched, highest rated finales there for TV shows, and obviously MASH is number one. I think Seinfeld. Then it was like Newhart or something like that. Was up there, and then and Dexter was way the fuck down the list, like shows like King of Queens beat Dexter. Like, I didn't even know King of Queens had a fucking final episode. You know what I mean? But that's because the final episode of Dexter aired in a time where people just fucking I'll download it on a BitTorrent site the next day or whatever, or I'll stream it off one of these streaming sites or whatever the fuck, like people aren't legitimately, like their numbers aren't reflecting the number of people that are actually watching this.
If I hear like something was cool on Raw, I'll go and find it online because I don't have cable.
Sure.
So say I hear The Rock pops up on Raw and I go and find it on YouTube. By the time I get to it 24 hours later, there's like 400,000 views for that. That's a good rating number right there just on YouTube that's not being monetized or accounted for by the rating.
That's not true.
It's
usually monetize YouTube now.
Yeah, but it's not always on the WWE account. There's usually like 10 different accounts.
They're really good now about getting shit off though.
I had actually a long talk with Road Dogg about that when I was down in Minneapolis for Raw last month, and how it's kind of an archaic system in the sense that there is so many different avenues now to watch any kind of program, whether it be through the internet, your phone, Netflix, PVR. It's really tough to actually put an exact number on when something pops up.
I'll be curious to see how long it takes for a wrestling pay-per-view, and I guess it's kind of already on the network and it's a similar deal, but for something to debut on, say, like a Netflix or a ShowMe or one of those streaming services where, hey, this content is exclusive to this streaming service. Like, I know there currently is WWE content on very minimal on Netflix, like it's not like an old Shawn Michaels DVD from 5 years ago and just shit like that, right? But I could see it taking that route eventually.
But myself, I used to purchase a lot of DVDs, like the Bobby Heenan Ultimate Warrior.
For sure,
I don't buy nothing anymore because I got the network, and it's going to be on there. Like right now, I'm still considering getting the Owen Hart one.
We were just talking about that the other day.
Yeah, I wanted to
put the DVDs on there, so we were like, we need to get the Owen Hart DVD.
I'm thinking of having that collection, matches and things like that.
No, and then the DVD business is definitely down. Like I show DVDs as part of my merchandise, and over the last 3-4 years, every year you see a decline. People still do buy the DVDs because like some people want that actual item. But I find now it's more so people will buy like the special attraction ones, kind of like the Bobby Heenan ones. Like they're not just going and buying an event anymore because they can easily access that. But if it's something like that's a cool concept, that's like, I'd like to have Uncensored 1995 in my collection. They purchased Uncensored 1995.
You know what would be an awesome DVD to put together, which I bet would sell like WWE's greatest jobbers and just have a match. have a match, but like give them each one match. You know, so just have like the guys we were talking about earlier. Have just like Barry Horowitz getting the shit beat out of him by the Undertaker in one match. And then
I know that might
you know, like Reno Riggins getting his ass kicked by British Bulldog in the next match, or whoever. Just like the biggest beatings. Like one guy gets one match. Each guy gets one match on it, and just have the biggest
like when
beatings.
Yokozuna used to kill guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yokozuna would just squash two jobbers at once.
That might sell for the boys. I think.
Yeah,
all the boys would buy that.
Yeah,
I don't know if that'd be like a big seller.
It might be.
I'd like to see more.
Virgil get in there.
But more like when once in a while they show during a DVD release or something on the network, they'll show Vince coaching a guy in a promo or something.
Yeah.
And I understand when they used to do those massive television tapings, sometimes something would screw up, and they'd have to put the two guys that maybe did a squash match. They'd have to put them later on the tape.
Yeah.
Something would happen, and there's been stories where the guy Yokozuna would squash a guy, and then all of a sudden they go. Didn't get the right camera shot, so they put the guy back out there 5 minutes later or something, or the infamous
call him back out again on the stick.
Was it Flair and Savage in Pennsylvania, and then Bobby Heenan comes up, they wave off the match because Vince wasn't happy, and they later on the taping they went out and did the match again. And
They did that a few years ago actually when the original Sin Cara was there and he was working with guys, and a lot of guys didn't know how to do his shit, and stuff would get screwed up 20 times. I remember hearing quite often they put him on SmackDown, that way there was quite a few times where he would wrestle more than once a night because they had to reshoot his matches.
Well, there's times that if you look carefully in the days of superstars and stuff, they'd have to make edits to match, and there'd be a guy getting whip a guy off the ropes for a clothesline, and maybe the other guy came back. And seriously,
I think Bobby J said that happened in one of his matches.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah,
and they had to go back and shoot it again.
Yeah, well, see, if they messed up a move and doing a taping, they like I think it was like DiBiase said, let's do that again. Like boom, take the guy back and hit maybe the clothesline didn't look good, and they take the guy back and do it the clothesline again.
Right.
The fans, just looked like the guy was repeating the move and weren't that smart to it. There's actual times where they'd stop the match and
I've heard them doing that for promos as well.
Yeah.
If a promo didn't get the point across the way it was supposed to, they'd send it back out.
or like Sid saying shit or something, and Gene Okerlund going, "We're live."
Changing gears, independent wrestling, there was a big injury not too far from Winnipeg. It was in North Dakota for a company I've worked for before called Fully Loaded Wrestling. And no, that does not mean you get fully loaded before you wrestle. Kenny Chevy did, but
I was just gonna ask.
I guess there's a wrestler by the name of Cody Rice who I've encountered in Minnesota quite a few times. They did a spot with a tag team where he went to hit him in the head with a screwdriver, but missed his head and got him right in the eye with the edge of the screwdriver. Had to be rushed to the hospital. He's going to have some kind of permanent sight damage and can't see out of his eye at all right now, and it's going to be a long road to recovery.
The jagged edge or the blooded
The jagged edge.
Oh.
The jagged edge right into the eye, like his eye. There's pictures hopefully that we'll get to Chris to pop up to show, but there's a lot of controversy right now about not only the injury itself, but putting other people in a position to possibly be injured in that regard.
So you know this guy, or you're familiar enough with him. What's his standing on the roster? Is he in a comfortable enough position where, because if someone said to me hey, we're gonna do this, I'm like, I'm not fucking taking that. Is he in a comfortable enough position where
the guy who took it, or the guy who did it?
No, the guy who took it. He
was,
or is he kind of new and he wouldn't tell somebody no?
They were. It was a tag team championship match, and they've been the tag champs there for over 300 days because they lost the titles that night, so they were kind of putting that over. So he's been there a while.
Oh, so he was in a spot where he could have said no if he wanted to.
I would imagine, yes.
Because if it was, if it was a kind of, a newer guy to the locker room or a greener guy or whatever, he doesn't want to tell a veteran I'm not comfortable with that.
I'll have to go back and watch the footage, but what confuses me about it, you can use something like that. That's fine. I could hit all four of you with a screwdriver right now and not take your eye out if you're covering the handle properly while doing it. Yeah. So I have to go back and see the footage to see the extent of it. But I don't see how it's possible for that to not have that blade cover going towards somebody's face. I guess a lot of the heat might be. I guess a lot of heat is stemming from it, obviously, because it is a reckless injury. It was a severe injury that can permanently affect this guy's life. Never mind his career. But I guess a lot of guys are kind of getting worked up and throwing heat at Cody because he was kind of flaunting the video in a sense of.
They look a badass.
Encouragement type?
Not necessarily that, but it was more very passive,
pass the heat.
Yeah, how was it worded? It was something
something about accidents happening.
Oh, we know the risks stepping inside the ring, and it's unfortunate this happened.
Instead of selling it, this guy did to me.
Yeah.
Lost my title, tried to take my eye out, I'll get him back.
Trying to
He's a
put
badass.
over the realism of it.
It wasn't that he was putting over the
No.
realism. It was more like he was passing off
The guy
the
who
severity of it
made
in
the
the sense
mistake.
that
Oh, he's
instead of going like, man, this is a really unfortunate, shitty accident that happened that I feel brutal about, it was more so, I think his wording was like, well, we all know the risks getting inside of a ring. It's unfortunate that this happened, kind of thing. It was really kind of nonchalant about it, so a lot of people were kind of jumping on him, going like, dude, you almost fucking took the guy's eye out. Or
Yeah.
you did take the guy's eye out.
I think it came off as instead of saying I screwed up
Like
and
insensitive.
then leaving it alone, it kind of came off like I need to say something, otherwise I might lose a booking because somebody might think I was reckless or something. Like it came off like just like, oh yep, accidents happen, you know, we all know the risks. It came off as trying to cover one's own ass more so than you should be concerned about what happened. I think that's why guys were getting heated about it.
Fuck, I don't know.
We wish him a speedy recovery.
This has been the
Yes.
question, since like ECW and just that style of wrestling, like using weapons and gimmicks to a further extent has kind of started. Like, is it worth it? Is it needed to do? When you think about it, I'm not familiar with the guy that got hurt. I may have been on a show with him there before. I'm not too certain. But I don't know what he got paid that night, but I sure as hell know it's not worth losing an eye over.
Fuck no.
So in a situation like that, is it a matter of like, oh yeah, well there is risk with professional wrestling, but where's that line crossed with? Well, some risks aren't worth taking because you can get the same point across doing something that might not potentially take an eye out. And I take a lot of dumb risks and have taken a lot of dumb risks that I probably haven't needed to over the years. That does come with the territory, but something like that can permanently damage somebody to that extent. Is there a line where you say, well, yeah, it's a good house, we got 300 people here, but those 300 people aren't going to be wheeling me around in a wheelchair the rest of my life if I can't see again.
I'm curious, especially like what your guys' thoughts are too, having been around in the mid to late '90s with the big hardcore wrestling boom in Winnipeg. We were listening to last night. You had I think it was like a shoot interview with Axl Rotten, and he was talking about that and how he was kind of the guy that they leaned on to do the hardcore stuff, even though he could wrestle. I've heard a lot of wrestlers put over him as someone who in ECW who could wrestle but got the reputation of being the hardcore guy.
Is this an older interview?
Probably, yeah, I think so.
I think,
it was just one of those
I
things
heard
on
that.
YouTube that just playing through different videos and stuff like that.
I've heard this interview.
I remember he mentioned something along the two things I remember was he said something about guys taking it too far these days, and guys not knowing how to do these things properly, and maybe that was the case here, and maybe that was something you guys saw here in Winnipeg over the years with that hardcore.
I remember there was a group, and for the life of me, and I do maybe think Royce was involved somehow, but I remember that coming out. They wanted me to be the gimmick commissioner and blah blah blah. And I went to the first taping or whatever they did, and I think I had Blade in the second match, and I went, I don't want to be part of this. This is just dumb. And that's when really. And that would have been, the late '90s. It's just like it was just dumb. There was no sense. And then before we even all got together, we were talking about storytelling in wrestling. And you could tell a hell of a story without using a screwdriver, and have people eating on the palm of your hand. And that's the talent. It's a cheap heat sometimes.
And things like that can be useful. Like
It could.
I've used tasers. I've used I've done plenty of things that are out of my realm, but they're always with people I trust. And
Think about a screwdriver. Like you get more mileage out of a guy pulling out a hockey stick or a sledgehammer. Because the guy in the back row can see it, but like who's going to see the screwdriver? Sometimes you got to pull it up and you got to do one of these and stuff. You got to think. You got to sell to the back row of the audience too.
Right.
Like, and sometimes I think obviously in your regard when you use the taser, I mean that's a hell of a gimmick because what happened to you, right? Because you got tased and you can sweep the sound on TV with a like a Scott Hall.
Right.
But I mean that.
Put the lights on and off.
Yeah, I mean, but at the bottom line, that's something that you pull it out and everybody sees it. They know what it is, right?
Yeah.
But a screwdriver. Might as well pull up a plastic spoon or something and do the butcher.
Ultimately, everybody has their own limitations, so it's up to the performer in the ring to what they want to do and what they don't want to do. Everybody, it's your body, so you can do what you want. I think there's still guys to this day, knowing what the risks are, will take unprotected chair shots, which I think is silly because you don't need to do it. But there's some guys that are cool with it. They're tough guys and they don't see the problem with it. They don't have a brain to begin with, some of them, so they're like, yeah, smash my brain up. I don't mind too much.
Yeah.
Where me, I've been hit in the head so many times over the years, just due to guys being like untrained or just being reckless. If anything comes towards my head, I'm protecting myself because even taking a super kick from somebody full force can concuss you and rattle your brain and affect your long-term life, and it's not worth it. And in reality, if you're in a real fight and someone's throwing a kick at your face, you're going to try to protect yourself. So it's not out of the realm of reality. But
and as a television announcer, and a guy does get his hand up, and it's obvious on television. You say he just got his hand up to protect himself, or it could have been a lot worse, right?
Of course.
It's not like Andre the Giant WrestleMania 3 missing the post. Like that. And then now if you watch that, they do a better edit, but. No, it's just, you're right, and that's the thing that always used to bother me about professional wrestling. Sometimes a guy getting a beating in the corner, like if you're in a fight, you do try to get an arm up, you do try to fight back a little bit.
Of course.
Try to do that, but then guy getting in the corner, just getting hit, right?
Yeah. Nothing's worse than that. You see guys sitting in the corner, just taking repeated kicks or punches to the stomach, and just taking them and taking them and taking them.
You see the divas now that I mean, like sometimes they're hitting their hands or something, but the divas are always blocking that face like that.
Oh yeah,
that's the way they train.
And if you're covering up, the guy can get more aggressive and violent with you because you are protected.
But you're right. But it's just a guy standing there getting a shot, or see the chair coming, like it's like the Flintstones, the guy hitting you with a club.
But it goes back to like comfort zone. Like there's a lot of things I'm not comfortable taking from just for not being maybe as athletically gifted to take certain things, or if I'm being put head over feet. I'm not overly comfortable with a lot of stuff that are like that unless I'm with somebody I really trust. So it boils down to just saying no, whether it's a wrestling move, a gimmick. Everyone needs to know their own limitations.
I could never take a backdrop. Never could take a backdrop.
And I've worked with plenty of guys that say that. Like, nope, I take a shitty backdrop, don't give it to me.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
I worked with guys that wanted backdrops because it was almost like it was a workout for them. If it was on TV,
I always ask
another backdrop.
There's few things worse than a shitty looking backdrop in wrestling, right? Like there's very few that, like if you take a shitty, I would rather a guy say nope, I don't take a good backdrop than to take a shitty backdrop. Because there are a few things that look worse than taking a shitty backdrop. So the only thing I will say on that is if you don't take backdrops, do not call a backdrop. I will get mad about that.
But I wrestled guys that's all they want to do is get backdrop because they'd be looking later on at the tape to see how high they got.
It's a great bump if you can do it well.
If you do it well, yeah.
But it really comes down to that because you being in control of your body, you know what you can do and you can't do. And I always ask you guys when even if something as minor as a backdrop, because so many guys are untrained now. As silly as it sounds, a backdrop is a fundamental flip bump. Everybody should be able to do, but a lot of guys can't just from not being trained how to post for it properly. So there's a backdrop, or even if I'm doing something like an arm drag, if I'm not comfortable with the guy or I haven't worked with him, first I'll ask him if he can do it, and my second question is, can you do it well? Because if you can't do it well and you're going to make my move look like shit, I'm not giving it to you.
There's some stuff where people are just banged up, and like my mobility in my shoulder after my surgery is relatively limited, and there's stuff there where I can't get this shoulder like up behind my head like that kind of thing. So there's some stuff.
Top wrist blocks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's my right, so it's not bad. But there's some stuff where that's like, hey, don't. Yeah, exactly. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. I can't get my fucking arm up to protect myself on that side that quickly, and it's not gonna,
Yeah, I can't properly dive into a swimming pool. There's just something about my mobility. Like I just can't do it. Like I just can't do it. But off a top rope, I could, with the right guidance, do the Ric Flair bump. But didn't take many of those. Didn't take many bumps in the end. But
in closing, stop taking stupid risks, people. There's more to life. Let's get that generator out.
Fire her up.
We are getting 6 numbers each. We'll start with Robert. We'll go around with 1, 1, 1. We'll just keep going until all 30 numbers are chosen.
As I was pulling up this generator, I got a text from Mr. Twister himself, Paul Marcoux, and the text is, when is the next wrestling show?
This Friday, Rookie Sports Bar.
Right, yeah, we'll get him down there. All right, first number.
All right, Robert.
Number 7.
Number 7. Kevin.
Myself, 22.
22. Dave.
Number 1. There you go.
Travis.
What's going to be rolling?
19.
19.
Myself.
23. Are we going snake here or are we going circle?
Just keep going around.
Right.
Yeah.
Back to Rob.
Yeah.
13.
13.
Then I got 20. Dave Petro has 12. Travis has the most winningest number in the Rumble, 27.
Solid.
Danny, you got 30.
There we go.
That's a good one to have too.
Rob, you got 21. I have 11. Dave, you got 6. Travis, 24. You got some good ones, Travis.
Yeah.
Danny, you have 4.
What happens with the 31 guys this year? So with 30
we all get our money back.
Y'all give me your money.
It's a push. Ooh, Rob, you got 2. I got 15. Right.
Chris Axel's never eliminated.
He was eliminated. He gets eliminated and then comes back on.
Has anybody gotten one yet? Was that up?
Yeah.
Dave got that.
Roman Reigns got number 1 last night,
Yeah.
so
Dave,
I guess you're hoping.
Sorry, Dave got, sorry, which number?
25 for Dave.
Okay.
28 for Travis. Fuck Travis.
Jesus.
Danny's got 14.
It's going to be 29.
Last 2 for each of us.
Rob has 8. I have 3. Oh, fuck me.
A bunch of
Dave's got 29.
Oh, there it is. That's a good
Jesus
one.
Christ, Travis has 26.
Wow.
Danny has 17. Rob's got 9.
Oh my god.
I've got 16.
4 top 10.
Yeah.
Man.
Dave's got 5.
Oh, that's a rough one.
Yeah. 5 and 6.
10 for Travis. And then
Okay,
finally Danny gets 18.
See, I probably won't win with 10.
Wow,
Who has
that's
30?
I think that was Travis, wasn't it?
No, it was.
I got
You
30.
got 30?
I got 4, 14, 17, 18, 23, and 30. Travis has got 19, 27, 24, 28, 26, and 10. So favorite
Fuck.
odds are in his
I
favor.
got Roman Reigns. No.
Rob's got
Roman
7,
Reigns.
13,
Believe in
21,
Roman
2, 8,
Reigns.
and 9. So you got to hope for somebody getting a push and kind of going the distance. And Kev's kind of all over 22, 20, 11, 15, 3, and 16. So there it is.
I'm going to make a prediction and say I think you're winning this year, Danny. I think with my prediction of Triple H, I think he's going to be your number 30, and I think
That would be
This
wonderful.
year might be your
I don't think
year.
he'll come on number.
I think
No.
that'll be
30s. Lately, the 30s always like a 30s always
Is he-
a strong possibility to win it every year. So
Yeah.
that's kind of they almost repeat themselves every year, and usually it's someone like physically big, like usually it's like a Big Show or a
It's
Kane
either
or
somebody who's
fucking-
going to win or it's a cool surprise.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's always disappointing when it's just like
Yeah.
a regular roster guy's number 30.
Yeah,
I just feel
Jey
like with the
Uso's
story
number
of,
30,
yeah.
of Reigns trying to conquer the entire Rumble, it would make sense to have Triple H come in as 30 and screw him. I think
Or
think
31.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Well, Reigns will be there at the end. You know
Let's
that.
take a quick
Oh,
commercial break and we'll get talking Dave Petro.
I need to get up and walk around. It's tight. Oh my god.
And we are back, and it's time to talk the career of Dave Petro, but we're out of time. There's nothing left. Or there's nothing to talk about.
We got
Which
the Matt
one is
Damon
it?
treatment here.
So you've been involved with the professional wrestling business since 1980.
Absolutely.
35 years.
Am I the only one who was born in 1980?
That's correct.
Yeah,
By far, actually,
the guy
kid.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
So take us back in time, a much older time,
Yeah.
not to date you,
I think you just did.
about the beginning of Dave Petro's career. What captivated you to get into professional wrestling, and how did you find a way into a business that was really guarded at the time?
Well, it's funny because earlier on in today's show we talked about watching with my grandfather watching All Star Wrestling out of Vancouver, and at the same time at the time it was CKY television and then CKND. Actually, go back to KCND when it was in Pembina. They had the AWA on, and of course everyone knows that was Verne Gagne's promotion. And I remember watching, and at the time I was more captivated by the AWA product. My grandfather liked the All Star Wrestling, but at the time I was watching the Valiant Brothers, Pompero Firpo.
Not Wild Man.
Pompero Firpo. Baron Von Raschke and Mad Dog Vachon when they were heels, right? Ray Stevens, Nick Bockwinkel, Verne Gagne, the beginning of the High Flyers, and just watching it, fascinated. One of the very first memories I remember watching is Big Joe LeDuc pulling a bus on TV, and he made a tag. He was in a tag team with Larry the Axe Henning, and And then I just was mesmerized. I could not miss AWA wrestling, and one of my favorites were Nick Bockwinkel, because just the wrestling was just, even as a kid, just looking, the guy was so good. And Big Bad Bob Duncan. Big Bad Bob Duncan, the original Cocaine Cowboy.
Yeah.
The guy was
Bobby Duncan
fantastic.
Sr.
And of course, Bobby the Brain Heenan. Never was much for a lot of the baby faces. Never cared for Greg Gagne, and that will carry into the story a little bit later on. I respected Jim Brunzell, and there was a steady...
What time frame was this that you were watching?
This would have been like the mid-70s, started to watch, and then AWA got hot in my mind, 78, 79, 80.
Okay.
You know, they were bringing in guys like Tito Santana, but Nick Bockwinkel was always the centerpiece of the show.
Of course.
Even as a youngster, you kind of knew something wasn't on the level with Verne Gagne. You kind of knew that the guy was running the whole show too. You know, I think the start in the Minneapolis TV was Verne Gagne's All-Star Wrestling, but Roger Kent as announcer. At the time was Marty O'Neill, transitioned into Gene Okerlund, and there was just something about it. Fast forward to now, and we were in junior high, and you know, reading the Herald newspaper, and being a wrestling fan, played wrestling on the school grounds with my buddies, and then there was a local wrestling show, New Brand Wrestling. And so we go there, and my dad and I wasn't even driving at the time, probably 15 years old, and 14 years old, 15 years old, Dad take me to the show, and I remember it was just at the Chalmers Community Center, which we've all been there.
Infamous.
My first match there.
Legendary.
Yeah, legendary, and we were watching, I watched Mean Don Green from Portage la Prairie, with Dr. Good, Vince DeLuca, there was the Jones brothers, Larry and Rick. And before he was Sailor Jones or whatever he was Crowbar Jones then, and Walter Shevchuk, he was Soul Man John Shaw at the time, and Chris Pepper, and of course we all knew Chris Pepper because Chris Pepper would make the trek every once in a while down to Minneapolis, and he was enhancement talent there, and kind of fancied himself as a little bit of a Dusty Rhodes wannabe, I suppose, and but just was mesmerized by these guys right in front of me, and the guys that stood out were Mean Don Green. This guy was incredible talent, and but he had bad knees, so he didn't last very long. And Walter as the Soul Man John Shaw. And
Was this the new brand that Walter was running?
it was the new brand that Walter was running, and it was Mike Stone, a young Mike Stone as the Super Saint with a hood, handsome Larry Hansen, and these guys, some of these guys aren't even with us anymore, and like Larry Jones and Larry Hansen. But I remember watching and going to watch, but then as you watch it, you go, you know what? I could do better than these guys. From my just being a fan and stuff. And the time I was a part-time kid working at a fast food restaurant on Henderson Highway, half a kilometer down the road, Walter Shevchuk lived, and he was a frequent customer to the restaurant, right? So I bugged him. He said, "Hey kid, you come down to Chalmers and give me $400 and I'll train you." Right? At the time, it was 1980 because I was in grade 11, and I just had a natural. I think I trained for about 4 weeks. He put me in a match against himself, won by disqualification.
Oh wow!
But I was in grade 11 in school. There must have been 40 people from school came to watch me.
You're a big draw.
And Walter smelt money.
Just out of curiosity, how long did it take to earn that $400 back then?
You know what? That was a while. It was. I paid. I don't. I think he waived it after a while because I had my first match in April, and by June I was the television champion.
Wow!
Yeah,
there you go.
And because I was putting butts in seats, and he wrote.
Did you work a lick, or was?
I thinking back of it, and watching, working with Kevin and working with your organization, you guys. No. But it's back to a different
time.
It's a different time, yeah.
Back then, you got a little bit of training and just got thrown in the ring and learned to work.
But what I always believed in, and we've talked about this, is the storytelling aspect, and that was the time that just when, and we're talking about the early '80s and then '81, '82, and then the Hulkster era, and then the transition into guys like Ken Patera and the bodybuilders, right? Yeah. And we were back in the areas of the Crusher and Mad Dog Vachon and Baron von Raschke, and that's some of the guys that I worked with, right? Like we were storytellers, and I often tell people wrestling is like magic. You kind of know something. The guy's not really pulling the rabbit out of the hat, but very few guys can do it, right?
For as little as your training was, you talked about how you had this thought in your head, I could do it better than these guys. That's what we all thought as fans. And then you get in that ring for the first time and you go, what in the fuck did I sign up for? Like that fear sets in of, I'm going to get killed. Did you have that same fear when you got in the ring with Walter for the first time?
There's a couple rumbles I've been in with you. I still think the same. Obviously, we've talked about arm drags and we were talking about moves and things like that. But you get your essential set of moves down and you work with someone who can call some spots and stuff like that. He can make you look like gold.
Oh yeah.
But then there was the resentment that set in because I was like a 17-year-old kid. Now I'm the television champion, and guys wouldn't want to work, or they would, they deliberately try to make you look bad. But it really didn't matter because I was putting 50 or 60 people at the Chalmers, and we were getting big crowds, and then Walter was happy, and everybody was happy. But no, I never.
So you're saying that same local wrestling resentment over you being a community club champion existed all the way back then the way it does today?
I think if you pick up one of Vance's books, it was probably the 20s that was going on. Oh yeah, you couldn't, if I was working for Walter, you couldn't work for Tony, and then Tony, you had a group, and this Joan, she shot off, and then these guys had their groups, and you couldn't work, and those guys hated your guys, and you'd run a town, and you got to run the town the next night, and it was just like it is today.
So that's still being somewhat the territory days. What kind of houses were you guys drawing back then?
You know what, we, at the Chalmers, it was probably, 100, 125, 100 and a half.
$3 a head?
Yeah, at $3 a head. And then, we'd go to, we do Brandon's, and we do different little towns like that. But, that was the time there was of the dishonest promoter, and I'm not trying to say.
What do you mean at the time? That's for me.
The guy would, you'd promote. I don't know, they would promote guys with similar names, and I can't give you any good examples right now on the top of my head, but
Rick,
Bunkyard Dog,
Dick Flair or something like that.
Rick Bach, we called.
You used to get away with it back then because there was no internet, there was no YouTube.
Exactly. I worked for an organization. We brought in a fake junkyard dog, but nobody knew what the real junkyard dog looked like, right? So. I don't know, a chubby black guy, and it worked out fine. But I'm an African American, folks, so I don't have to blow up my Twitter on that one. But but no, and it was fun. I switched to heel when my draw was starting to go down a little bit, and at the time we were bringing in some new guys. And we saw the debuts under my nose of guys like Brian Jewell and things like that. And at the time, some of the guys exited. There was Ricky Patterson worked with Walter, and he went off to Mexico and Hawaii and Japan, and Mike Stone went to Hawaii.
You would have been there for the wrestling debut of Wayne Stanton as well, then, would you have not?
Well, right, Wayne was the ring announcer. Wayne was the actual guy that gave me my name.
Really?
Yeah, he gave me my
so
name.
Wayne broke in before you did?
Yeah, he was doing the ring announcing for Walter. Yeah.
But he was doing some managing for Walter as well, was he not?
I think we all did different things like that. I think, Wayne really, then of course he had an infamous, there's been known he has a little temper tantrum or something and goes away for a little while.
I think we discussed at least one of those with every guest.
Yeah.
Everybody's been fired by Wayne at one point or another. What are some of your early impressions of Wayne breaking into the business compared to the way he's kind of transitioned and how you later become over the years?
I have, aside from one time in the dressing room, I've never ever had a ill contact or a bad vibe from Wayne. I was one time the only time that we ever had words that he just lost his mind is he was as the ring announcer. I think it was for a River City wrestling show, and at the minute we were just changing the finish, and we probably took a little bit too long, and he was standing in the ring with a microphone, and he came back in, and he just let us have it because we made him look stupid all day. But it was just it was just so innocent because we weren't doing anything other than just kind of making sure that everybody knew the spots. And
yeah.
Other than that, no, I've never had an issue with Wayne, but I've never had to talk money. I never was a promoter against him or anything. So, I think I've gone along, and Shevchuk and Candello, and we can go to Ernie and Bobby and all these guys have promoted shows. Most of the guys have promoted shows I've never had an issue with. I never got that deep into it.
Breaking into the business before the big boom of WWF across the globe, being a young wrestler breaking into the business, what would your aspirations be like at that time? Because for me growing up, late 80s, early 90s, I wanted to be a WWF superstar. So breaking into the business at that time, what were some of your unrealistic and realistic ambitions?
I thought I could be an AWA superstar. Like, you know, you watch that. I mean, if anybody remembers the program, they taped it in a television studio in Minneapolis, and these guys were larger than life. And as a kid, you'd go to the Winnipeg Arena, and the Winnipeg Arena was substantially smaller at the time, and they jammed 10,000 people in there, and it was just mayhem, and it was just the greatest feeling in the world. And these guys, they put on some great matches, you know. And then I think as I got a little older, and I remember distinctively watching a match, and it was a tag match with Billy Robinson. And Billy Robinson was going after a guy outside on the ring apron, and it must have been Pat Patterson, jumped out of the way, and Billy Robinson hit his head in the post and come up bleeding, right? So it's just a spot. And then remember we were at a family camping trip, and I'm watching the black and white television in Minneapolis. And let's go now to the St. Paul Civic Center and watch this match. And they did the same spot. Watching this, right? And then, you know, my dad and my grandfather, oh, it's the phony baloney wrestling, phony baloney wrestling. And I remember watching this going, all right, there might be something to this, right? You can't see this thing, you can't see this happening again. But my dad is funny, and he figures in my story because, you know, it's this phony baloney wrestling, the phony, I'm not taking it anymore, drop me off, I can't watch it. And I said, Dad, I've been training for a couple of months, I got a match. You're going to get yourself killed. But no, it was...
What was the mentality like at the time? Because if you listen to all the back in the day brother stories, the business was very protective. You know, guys had to work a little bit snugger with new kids so they didn't, you know, expose the business. Did you have to experience any of the old kayfabe and kind of the traditions of the business at the time?
You know, when I was, I wouldn't say I wanted to ever say the word headlining for Walter, but I remember one time Larry Jones taking me backstage in the AWA, and I got kayfabe bad. And Larry knew some of these guys, right? So that was a time. But no, I mean, you know, Walter and guys like Chris Pepper, and they you know, I told the story to Vance. It's in one of his books, Wrestling in the Canadian West. Remember as a kid, you know, maybe in the business for 2 or 3 months, and listening to Chris Pepper tell a story about him in Florida with Dusty Rhodes, and talking about how Dusty this and Dusty that, and he talked with a southern accent, Chris did, and he's telling everybody that these are the boots that Dusty Rhodes wore when he beat Harley Race for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, and he gave them to him, and you know, we're sitting around there listening, like our grandfather's telling stories Christmas, right, like this, we're listening, and I was, you know, kind of sitting there and, you know, lacing up my boots and going out. Walter would be putting together the show in his office, which was the bathroom at the time, right? Always, doesn't matter where. And then I could just hear him from the stall, because he knew it was me. You could tell by my boots. He goes, Dusty Rhodes, he's got size 13 feet. And then his hand underneath the stall. Pepper's feet are this big. He says, those aren't Dusty Rhodes' boots. He's full of shit. But I mean, Chris told that wonderful story about you. Everybody bought it. I'm sure I probably told us inflated stories to my nephews and stuff, but it was a little bit tough. It was tough to actually get someone's attention to get and talk to Walter, you know, outside. But I think that the guy knew me. He knew me as the show, and I was a big kid, right? So, and then you know, realizing then once I could make money on me.
Were they pretty strict like then on, you know, hey, heels don't hang out with faces, like don't get caught at the burger joint after with, or did they not really give that much?
I think we protected it ourselves a lot. Like, I mean, I think there was times like, you know, if you were leaving the same time a guy, and there was 2 different exits or something. Yeah. If you saw the guy, you'd look the other way, or you wouldn't do anything like that. But no, it was quite interesting. It was fun. It was good. It was good to go to different towns and made some lifelong friends. You know, guys like, you know, I still can talk to Walter Shevchuk if I bumped into him or his wife, and Mike Stone is still a great friend.
Get him for the Rumble to remember. I've been trying for 5 years.
Yeah, you know, last time I saw Mike, and I saw him at a Blue Bomber game this summer, so yeah. I'm trying to get him. He's looking in better shape than I saw him 2 years ago. So
people have always speculated, even back then, that wrestling was a work. But it wasn't completely out of the bag yet. So were you treated any differently than, say, wrestlers are today by the general public? Was it, you know, you're a big phony, or was there more of a respect for what you did?
No, I think even then, too, people knew something wasn't legit about it. Like, and then, you know, but it was like, well, what you do is not legit. But, you know, what we see on TV, those guys are really fighting. And You know, it was like again, it was like magic. And then, you know, it was even when I was wrestling for New Brand, it was like some guys wouldn't even call you pro wrestlers, right? Well, you're not pro, you're like amateur. No, I'm not amateur wrestling. The genre is professional wrestling, and people were getting paid for it. Not me, but people were getting paid.
You were getting a kickback for that big house you were drawing?
No, that's how I weighed my training, and we got a couple of burgers in the dressing room. But you know what? And it's just like I do it now because I do it for the love of the business, and we do the television and things like that because we just like being around it, and it's fun. And I still think I can add something to it, right? And after we did some stuff with Walter. He had lost some guys, and the houses at the Chalmers were down, and we did Saints roller rink, and then Walter lost his ring to fight with Ernie Rowe, and Walter built himself a wooden ring, and it just got hard in the body. And then Walter came to us one day and he said, "Listen, AWA is taping in town, and we're going to have some synergy. We're going to work with the group. They're going to help us. It's going to be great for both organizations." And maybe it might have been great for Brian Jewell because he had a couple of good matches with Ray Stevens and Big Daddy Splash, but it wasn't good for me. They put me in week 1 in the television tapings against Animal and Hawk, the Road Warriors. Got squashed in like about 35 seconds. Animal hit me with the clothesline so hard I couldn't drive my car properly for a week.
Oh wow!
And I came downstairs and looked on the sheets, and I was to wrestle them again in week 3 and week 5.
Oh
and
wow!
I just picked up my gear and said goodbye to Tony Atlas on the way out, and just drove open my gear and didn't get my check. Right?
That 30 seconds was that rough?
Well, you know what? I live in this town, right? Like I don't want to do stuff. When you talk about protecting yourself, from moves that look bad, but I worked in this town. I mean, I didn't need to be completely embarrassed like that. Hey, I'm all for having a competitive match, and I'm not going to go over against Road Warriors. Don't get me wrong, but put me in. At the time, I might have been even the tri-province champion for Walter, right? So this isn't right. And that's like, it soured me on that. That would have been 84. We did a couple more things in 85. I worked a TV taping for Candello against Chris Markoff. And
it would have been one thing if they planned on doing something with you but if you're just there to get squashed in your town, it's going to have a negative effect on the way you are perceived in your town
exactly.
long term.
Yeah, Candello used me for a WFWA taping against Markoff. I had an 11-minute match with Chris Markoff. Looked great, right? And then all of a sudden he put me against Hank Meadows under a hood, and I don't like this anymore. So I just again, the same thing. I was never going to be the main event, but I do have a claim to fame. We talked about this before. I was the guy that actually probably was most responsible for getting Don Callis into the business. His dad, my dad were like best friends.
I do want to get to that. Before we do, talk about that experience with Hawk and Animal. Like back then, a lot of the matches were called in the ring. Squash matches are what they are. They're easy to do. Did you have any interaction with them?
No, you were going to get the pin.
Literally just see you out there and they just eat you up?
No spots, just
no.
You're getting the pin. And so the other guy was Bruce Dern. He was a traveling squash guy. I think it was Bruce Dern or Bruce Dean. And he started. They came out the match like the Road Warriors used to start the match, and they just started throwing and throwing and throwing, and it was Hawk that went to throw me. He was going to throw me over the top rope. In mid-air, literally, he said, "This is the AWA, that's a disqualification." He caught me and jabbed me through the second rope, right?
Oh, wow.
Anyway, so go back up there, and now, that hurt. This is not fun. This is not fun. And I get back up in the ring apron just to wait for get the tag in, and then just get pummeled and take the pin. And I remember going back, and I thought I sold the clothesline relatively well, considering he almost decapitated me. And Greg Gagne says, "You don't know how to sell." He says to me, Greg Gagne, all 198 pounds. And he says, "What?" He says, "Yeah, you weren't selling." I go, I didn't have no idea what he was talking about. Later on, when I actually saw the match the following Saturday on AWA All-Star Wrestling, when I got back on the ring apron after getting tossed out, I wasn't selling. I just had that shit scared look on my face. I was waiting for my tag. I could have, sold it.
So that was the beginning and end of your AWA career.
Yeah, I just didn't. I didn't need to get embarrassed. I get no problem. Putting a guy over. No, not at all. I never had a problem with that. But it's not the embarrassment thing. I live in this town.
Did local promoters at least bill you as an AWA legend following that, or AWA TV star?
Yeah, it was like a legend now. I think I may have in my mind I have, but no. It's then we did, like I said, we did some other shows and kind of soured the relationship a little bit with Walter, because I'm sure that there was some money that got changed hands on that.
Definitely.
Bring the guys in, right? He was like booking the local talent. I did some stuff, and then like I said, did a couple shows for Candello, and then just kind of.
You also did some traveling throughout Canada, did you not?
I did some stuff in the early 80s before I was still working for Walter. A girl who ended up being my first ex-wife, Christine, she lived across the street from the Tonkos. And I played hockey with Todd Tonko. And so when I was going out for business all the time to Vancouver, we had for meetings and stuff, so I'd get booked on Al Tonko shows. Dean Ho, I wrestled, not Don Ho, but Dean Ho. And I had a duration match one time with the Iron Duke. So yeah, so that was pretty good. I always liked the Al Tonko. I always liked the Tonkos and stuff. And that was kind of fun to do. And did some matches there. Did a couple of shows later on and filled in for guys and stuff. And did some stuff that we'll talk about Don, but with No Holds Barred Wrestling and some Top Rope Championship stuff. And then hooked up with you guys just doing some television.
Talk about meeting the character that is Tony Condello. How'd that come to be, and what were some of your first impressions of dealing with that fucking cat?
Yeah, that's the funny thing too, because I think even though when I was working for Walter, like I had a good personality, like I would bump into these guys, and I'd go to some shows, like some of the other guys' shows. I'd lay low in the background because I wouldn't want any attention or anything like that. And sometimes if the guy saw me lurking around when Tony's having a smoke and stuff, he knew who I was, so he'd invite me in. And I would have to pay, and I'd watch from a quiet spot like that. So I always had a good relationship. And remember, as a youngster starting off, Walter would say, "Hey, you don't want to work for Tony. He's a crook." And then Tony said, "What are you doing working for that Walter? He's a crook, right?"
Oh, they probably both were. It was either one of them.
I'm not gonna besmirch anybody on television, or a podcast. So yeah, it was good, and it was a really great experience. I mean, I met some great people. I wrestled in some cool places, and at the time it was different. The guys that I wrestled with, there were some guys like Mike Stone took it very seriously, and had booked himself and had a couple good years in Mexico and some Hawaii stuff, and I wrestled some neat guys, like Lars Anderson, and when he came in, we did a run with him, and met some neat guys like Leo Burke and Ron Polk, the Mighty Zulu, and and that's just in the Chalmers days.
Did you get to do one of the infamous death tours?
I did not. No, I did not. I always, the one thing that always kept me grounded was I had a job. I had a job, and wrestling was always kind of on the side, like a sideline thing. And I made time for it. And I did that, but I always had to work, so I never did those tours. I really kind of regret it in a way that, well, one of the reasons I didn't, when I traveled, when I would do spot shows, I had my own car, and even if I wouldn't get enough money for gas money, because I was a non-smoker. Everybody in the business at the time smoked. Mike smoked, and the only guy that didn't smoke was Walter, but Condello and all these guys, they smoked, so I was always driving myself, and I don't think I could have done a death tour with everybody.
I've done it, it's terrible.
Yeah. Like, it's a non-smoker, right?
It's awful.
Yeah,
after 20 minutes, you want out.
Yeah, I was, raised in the area where, you go to the bars, they were smoky and stuff like that, but it was never like someone smoking in a car.
No,
my parents smoked, and I remember, hanging my head out the window like a dog,
So you were in the business when it took that big boom to the national level, WWF started taking over the world. Take us back in time to how that affected local wrestling as wrestling started to be perceived in a different way and looked at through a different view altogether.
Well, I think that when the boom started, AWA boom started a little bit early because of Hulk Hogan coming in, but AWA was always solid draw, right? It was always 10,000 people. Even when they expanded the arena, there were 8,000 or 9,000, and it was always there in the back. Everybody talked AWA wrestling, and then when Vince started making noise, and he took the Hulkster, and he took the television spot, and it was all muscle guys, and all high spots, and all muscle guys and high spots and stuff, and that's what people wanted to see. They didn't want to see a 15-minute match anymore live. They wanted to see what they saw on television, and they wanted to see the guys. So, it was the crowd. I always thought that the crowd's kind of dwindling a little bit, even though you're charging $6 to come see them.
Right.
But that time, a ticket to a WWF event probably was only $15 though. But so there was more stuff on television, and that's when cable started to boom. And
did it change the general perception of the business in the sense that with all
you don't look like a wrestler anymore?
Yeah. Was that a reality that affected Winnipeg wrestling?
I believe so. Yeah, I did. There was, still, there's, God love them, there's still small guys that want to get in, and but
Travis is working really hard.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of beef, but no, it was tough, and I still. you know, I don't want to be these guys that always say, you know, wrestling was better in those days, because you know what? It really wasn't. In terms of wrestling, it wasn't. Storytelling was. You know, I could watch it, and I can watch some matches, and sometimes it's hard to watch some old stuff, especially old stuff from Madison Square Garden, like, you know, San Martino and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That was awful.
AWE is hard for me to watch.
It is.
Really is. And I love old wrestling.
Yeah.
AWE was an extra pace slower than everything else.
Yeah.
And some of it's tough to sit
Yeah.
through for that reason.
I mean, I think it changed when the bodybuilders came in. I think it changed for the better with Superstar Billy Graham, because those matches all of a sudden had excitement. But you go back and watch Spiros Aaron with Bruno Sammartino from MSG and some of those it's just awful stuff. Or Captain Lou and all this when he was wrestling and stuff. That was terrible wrestling.
Did Winnipeg wrestling get hit with the 80s boom of sex, drugs, and rock and roll? Was that prevalent?
I mean, yeah, you know, it came back in the 90s. Everybody had a valet.
Yeah.
And there was maybe a little bit of substance in the dressing room in those days. I'm not going to point any fingers or something. I was always a beer guy. Yeah, but no, everybody had a valet then. In fact, in one of the matches, I can't remember. I probably think it was 94 or 95. Guy who turned out to be one of my best friends. We used his wife, who's now his wife, Suzanne Gurel. She was Suzanne Walton. She was our valet because it was Bobby and Brian Jewell. They were leather and lace, and they had a valet, and she was always with the hairspray in her eyes. And we got tagged. They were tag champs, and me and Mike were chasing them. And you know, the referee's back was turned, and they'd squirt the hairspray in the eyes, and of course we'd get pinned. And the next week we'd come back, and I'd grab the hairspray, and of course the whole place would go bananas, and I'd spray Brian, I'd smell Bobby, referee turn around, we'd get disqualified. So we had to fight fire with fire, and got our own valet, and got a little crazier then, and a little bit more towards what people were seeing on television.
How far into your career did you score your first rat at Chalmers?
Probably been the night that I won the television title back in June of.
A big night. You're a big celebrity in Alberta.
I can tell a story. I think it was Fraser's Grove Park, maybe, and still living at home, so you couldn't take the rat home.
Solid.
So after working for Candela, you took a long hiatus from the business.
I did. I mean, I got a little more serious with my career at work, and I got married in '86 for the first time. The first ex-wife, and then she didn't really. I don't think she really cared, but you know, I didn't have any children, but we had different priorities and things like that. So, and it changed a lot, right? Some of the guys changed. I wasn't a bodybuilder, but I always had the love of the business. And then when they were starting to promote again in the '90s, and I had some out of the marriage, and now I was dating a girl that. Brother was really into wrestling. So, hey, let's go out for the Chalmers. Let's watch the shows. And I remember going in there, and Petro's in the crowd. Eh? Let's run a gimmick with him, right? Sure enough, and I was wearing at the time I wear contacts. I was wearing my glasses, and I says, I gotta take my glasses off. So I was sitting with the kid there, and he's watching the matches and enjoying himself. And all of a sudden, they start chirping at me. And just before that happened, I said to him, "Hold my glasses." Why? And then sure enough, we did something. It was Mike Stone as he was doing his, I think he was doing his corporal punishment, and Sergeant Tom Steele. Yeah, they were doing that gimmick and stuff. So I got back into it, and then Stanton was involved again, and Doug McCall was involved. And
How had Stanton evolved over those years from being the ring announcer to promoter? Was there any difference in dealing with him?
I never had an issue with him. Never.
Are you the one guy on the podcast who have not been fired by Wayne Stanton?
Yeah. No,
wow.
I think Wayne got fired from before I did in that organization. I think Doug McCall took it over.
They were partners.
Yeah, I think then you know how that all ends, right? So I think Doug didn't. But then then me and Mike were chasing for the tag team title, and we Mike and I like to have a little fun in the dressing room too. So we had. It was a lot of fun. And again, it kind of died off again. I mean, that was the time that we were doing television again and on the cable show. And I wasn't involved, but then Brother Midnight was. And
6 years is a long time. Was there a noticeable change in the business, or just how the business was evolving at the time? Because it was right on that edge of starting to kind of take a change to where it is today.
You know what? It did in terms of guys being a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more high spots, a little bit more... there's more chair shots and more violent than it was before. But for me, I remember I think the first match I came back after that, might have done against the Tulip or something on the television match. And
Can you confirm if he's dead or alive? That's been an ongoing question on the podcast every week.
we have to find out. I mean,
everybody's been asking, but nobody knows for sure.
I'll have to find out. I know Agent Orange is alive, but I don't know what the Tulip. But
Well, if you hear something, we're waiting.
But I remember having that. Remember guys coming out of the ring, guys saying, "No ring rust on you," right? Like I said, I think it was like the way I wrestled and stuff like that. I wasn't gonna do any feats of strength. I wasn't gonna do any hurricanranas and things like that. I was just giving them a match that I used to do, and it was kind of fun. And it just you tried to spice it up a little bit more with a little Dusty Rhodes and a little bit more razzle dazzle. I think when I came back to that run, I was probably a better storyteller, at least in my mind I was, and I knew I was a hell of a lot more confident, that's for sure.
That's really what it is. As you
Yeah.
get older as a man in the business, you
Yeah.
just have that confidence about
Yeah.
you because you're not a
Yeah.
young,
Kid.
insecure kid, not quite sure what you're doing in there yet.
Yeah, and then I feuded with Mike and had some crazy brawls with Mike, and then all of a sudden something happened and there was an angle, and then Mike was getting beat up by Leather and Lace, and I came to the rescue, or vice versa or something, and we had a nice little run.
So you broke Don Callis into the business.
I didn't
Something
really-
I didn't know
I
that.
didn't really break him in. His father, Don Sr., and my father were friends, and from what I remember, Don would come out into the Chalmers, and he knew I was involved in wrestling, and his dad would tell him, and Don would phone and talk to me, and at the time, again, working full time, and I'm not a trainer. Like, I really wasn't a trainer at all, so I put Don onto Tony Condello. Give Tony a call. Here's his number. Give Tony a call. Tony will take care of it, right? Later in his career, he said that I was ignoring him. Like, I didn't want to give him the time of day. But, and since then I've had the conversation with him, like, Don, didn't ignore you. Just couldn't train you. I just wasn't a trainer. Like, I just wasn't that. Still, even on Jericho's podcast, he still kind of,
The two ago.
still kind of talks about it. I kind of ignored it, but I think it's not a shoot now.
Yeah, I was just joking.
Yeah, it's kind of working.
You and Don are the same age, right?
I'm a couple years older than Don.
What were your first impressions of Don?
Don was kind of a skinny, kind of an arrogant kid, and now he's just kind of a more filled out, arrogant man sometimes. But I appreciate what he did in the business. I think, and I can sit down, I can talk wrestling. I worked with him for like 5 years with City FM with the No Holds Barred radio program, and with Joe Aiello, and I always thought he had a great mind for the business and stuff. Did at times take himself a little bit too seriously, but hey, he could have. He was the Jackal and Cyrus, and he had that good run on ECW television as the network and things like that. And I bought into it. When ECW booked Minneapolis for a TV taping, we went down, a busload of people to see him and stuff like that. I became a huge fan, right, because the guy made it, right. And remember him when he first came back in with the WWF at the time, and as was he? The Jackal, and cutting a promo, talking about growing up in the mean streets of Tuxedo and stuff.
A lot of people will talk about him kind of having an arrogance and kind of carrying himself above others. Is that something that was from day one, or is that something that was kind of obtained as his status in the business group?
I think it was day one. I mean, Barry had a great high opinion of himself, and he took care of himself. He trained real hard, and I gotta tell you though, when Jericho did his 25th anniversary match, and I was watching that Saturday night on the network, and he introduced Dr. Luther, and then all of a sudden, and sitting right beside Lance Storm was Don, right? And I popped, right? I popped, right? I was like, whoa! I texted him right away, and Don sent me back a picture of him and Jon Stewart, because he was sitting right beside Jon Stewart.
That's really cool.
We still exchange a couple of texts every once in a while. We always have through the years, but. Age is mellow, the guy. I mean, again, super respectful what he did. I mean, hey, even sitting front row at Madison Square Garden, I had never been to Madison Square Garden, right? There's guys sitting there, and I had to do it. I had to go in December, not to watch the Rangers play. But no, I mean, again, Don couldn't train me. I couldn't train. I was working.
So the 90s saw your official in-ring retirement. Who was your actual last match? You've done gimmick matches and such since, but who?
Well, I never really had a send-off, never had a finale. I mean, I always came back as commissioner and that. I never really had a final match. I mean, we did one in 2000 with, I was tagged up with Doug Lenny of the Winnipeg Sun against, I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Vance and Brian Jewell again. Because Vance and I think Doug Lunny had an issue.
So was there like a conscious decision, like, hey, I'm done doing this, and that's what transferred
you know,
you to
no,
commissioner,
it's
or is it just something that just kind of happened?
Step aside and let these young guys do it, right? Because
Exactly.
I don't have the body, I don't have the dedication to training, and I really don't need, and if I can help in any way I can, and I think that I've always been like that. If I can help in any way I can, and time is still tough for me sometimes. If I can ring announce, or I can go out and drive out to a town and ring announce or something, if I can fit in my schedule, I like doing it.
So who was your, like, those gimmick matches aside as commissioner, who was like the last match you had a part of like your official in-ring run against? What year would
it
it
had
have
to been. We might have to talk to Vance Nevada about that. The guy's got better memory than
He's not talking to me these days.
No. Might have to send
That goes back to episode
might have to
1.
send him a
Or
Facebook
Doug Lunny,
message.
for that matter. Or Doug Lunny.
But no, I have to double check, because I'm sure it was a tag, because it was when Mike and I were tagging and we were chasing leather and lace, and we captured the belts, and we lost the belts to Brian and Bobby, and I think I might have hung around for a little bit more, but then Mike got his nose out of joint with Eddie Watts, and it was just a whole scene there. So I think I hung on for a little while longer. That's probably it. So that would have been, I want to say 95, 96. And that's, you'll have to check the dates.
And now, in recent times, you've been with CWE. You've been with CWE TV since day one as our play-by-play guy. Give us some memories, some reflections of watching CWE TV. You've literally called every match that's been on television for us. What are some of the ones that stand out, and some of the guys that have stood out to you in the new era here in CWE, and some of the guys you personally enjoy calling?
The first Steiner match that we recorded at Southport, is it that? School?
That college.
Yeah.
Southeast College.
Southeast
College.
Yeah.
Scott Steiner, Billy Blaze.
Oh, that was a tremendous match. That was a tremendous show. The whole show from top to bottom. Imagine that, and the energy that in the building that time.
It was a really good booker that put that together. Actually.
Yeah, that was fabulous. Yeah. Fabulous.
The dog food match stole the show on that one.
Yeah.
That was the whole show from top to bottom was fantastic, and that was tremendous. I mean, every meeting Steiner, meeting guys like Justin Gabriel, Tommy Dreamer. Was it Paul London, that one show we did at the Portuguese Center or something, or the Philippines?
Yeah, that was it.
And then how long before you got into the ring, and work him, and then meeting Lita and all these guys, like it's like a marking up, just full mark, like more, especially that's a great story. I remember when you booked Steiner for that show I was telling you about, and then again, the email would come out. Who can pick up Steiner from the airport? It was like me. I want to pick him up. Right? I know what he looks like, so I'll wait for my customs.
They don't do this.
I had 2 orders. I think that day we picked him up, it was like minus 38 without the wind chill, and I thought, how's this going to go over? And the guy's going to put me in the Steiner recliner in the parking lot, so I had to make sure the car was warm. So he came in, and he was very quiet. Not mean quiet, but just quiet. I mean, the guy traveled all day to get here. Didn't really know what to expect, and you put him up at that hotel. By crossing the convention center.
Oh, the one that's no longer.
It was condemned.
It was condemned. Tommy Dreamer loves that one too. He said that's that's one hotel he turned down sex at because of the crack addict knocking at his door trying to get in.
And I remember going in there and Steiner asking for a king size bed, and the guy just kind of looked at him like behind 2 inches of glass with a little hole at the dots and stuff. And just right out of the episode of Law and Order. Then there was something screwed up with the booking, and we had to call you and stuff like that. And I thought I was going to get it. I thought I was getting the Steiner recliner right in the lobby, and he said to me, "Where can I go eat?" And at that time, I just had to bow it quietly. The keg is just down the road, right? And he says, "Thank you." And then the next night the show was, and he was just a perfect gentleman to me, and he thanked me for the recommendation of the dinner and all that stuff. But how was the hotel? And he just looked at me. Again, that look came back. He wanted to kill me.
Shane Douglas stayed at that hotel, and I remember me and him hung out a little bit too when he was in. And and we were scheduled to have Vader the next show. He's like, He's like, Leon won't fit in that bed, man. He's like, there's no way. It just won't work. He's like, Leon won't be able to. I don't know how the fuck he's gonna sleep.
Push two together, maybe.
Never came to. He couldn't get through customs.
The guys you book, though, I mean, it's such an array, and Kevin and I, we talk about this all the time. It's such an array of guys that have established themselves, like yourself, like you're going to be one day. Kevin. You use the veterans like Collins, right? And you've used guys, and bringing Bobby J every once in a while, right? And the up and coming guys, and that's what puts you in the category.
Yeah,
right?
there you
got
go,
the talent there, like the matches that we see.
You say up and coming on guys? he does do that from what I understand.
But just
it's been an hour. You lasted about an hour. I'll give you props for that.
The matches, like they just even to the part when you bring in Kat Von Hees and Violet, right? Like some of the matches have just been there's a times that when we're done, doing our voiceovers for the show, or we've done, doing a card live, that we might look at each other and go, how's that going to play on television? And but for the most part, I'd probably have to say that 95% of the matches, the action is so solid. I mean,
what's the shittiest match you've ever had to call on CWE TV?
Well, I don't know if it's shitty.
I can answer.
I don't know if you can say that's shitty, but sometimes. Like we've had challenges through the years with the camera work, and
I meant in terms of the match just being.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's a time that we blew one of your matches because we didn't know you got a knee injury outside the ring, right?
Cameron didn't catch
it, right? And then we were left.
And I was the match before you, so I wasn't really.
Yeah, and we didn't know it. I remember catching a little heat about it.
For the last 2 years, we've had the best wrestling captured on the worst film in the history.
Absolutely.
We've had some of the best matches.
I was going to say the worst is since I've been calling with you, which is over half of the episodes now. There was, and I'm not just saying it because it's the two shittiest guys, but and obviously so. There was a Brian Rich versus Cannibal match. That was I don't know who's.
Yeah. And then there was one when
I don't know how that one came to fruition.
When Mike Young and I were doing it, the one kid that would always screw up his name, Kamikaze. His first match was terrible in CWE that I called.
Really?
Yeah. And I think he might have been working with those local brothers. Might have been.
Like Ike Evans or something like that.
No, there's those British guys, London.
Oh, those guys.
Might have been one of those guys. That might have been. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I was selling them this from Britain or something. But that was and then every other match that Kamikaze did has just been
he was incredible.
I think the first one, he just didn't click with his opponent.
Right.
And I remember going this wall. But other than that, but yeah, you're right. Anything with
Cannibal or Brian Rich?
Cannibal.
Pick one.
Oh, Brian Rich
had some ones.
Brian Rich, the ring entrance was so good, right?
Depending on who he's in there with.
Yeah.
My first ever CWE match with Cannibal.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it breaks my heart because I legitimately think in the last 2-3 years, some of the shows that produce some of the best matches this country has seen in decades.
Yeah.
And the quality of camera work has just been I wouldn't even call it amateur. It's sometimes like a toddler is holding the camera. And we've had so many issues that I'm so glad we have Chris, the man behind the camera, helping us out now. Hopefully capture this stuff better because it's such a good wrestling product. You never think it.
The memory card was full, or this wasn't on, or this wasn't plugged in.
Well, so in that case,
this cut out halfway through the second match of the card, or this cut out. It's fucking something.
Like the last episode with my match with Gabriel, somebody put the card cam on level with
counter.
On the level of the fan's head, and there's a kid with my foam finger going like this the whole match. Steinmack. And you can't watch half the match because every time he puts his hand up, it blocks the view, and for some reason the roaming cam's not working. And I'm just smashing my face into the wall. Because for 2-3 years I booked so many extra guys on the road specifically for TV. And the TV doesn't work out, so I've probably just lost thousands of dollars on matches that weren't necessary because it didn't make the TV, or at least in the quality it should have been.
So I think what we're saying here is You need to start, if you're watching CWE TV, you need to start actually coming to the shows.
Why?
The matches are amazing.
Well, Chris is taking over, and I'm really excited to see what he can do because I've seen the work he's done with the podcast, and the TV's going to be really good.
Our best television match since I've been calling. I think I've watched them all because before when we were sharing them, I'd always watched them all, or I've been at pretty much all those original tapings too. Our best one. And the camera quality was good. It got cut really nice too, and everything was. I would say is Sigmund and Chase Owens. Like
that was an incredible match.
Yeah, from Cyrus. That was that. I would say that was our best match quality wise.
That was the Chris Hero tour, yes.
It was, yes.
Yeah.
No, midget tour.
We're getting the time is up, Q. So I always ask this question, and. To every guest, who is the shittiest person you've ever been in the ring with, and the worst match you had in your career?
Oh boy.
I don't want to hear about the good ones; those are no fun. I want to hear about the bad experiences.
There was a guy in the New Brand days, Len Mitchell, and I don't know why.
Len or Glenn?
Len Mitchell. He was wrestling as Big Daddy Splash, and for some reason he had some sort of issue with me. Yeah, he was big, one of the 400-pound guys.
Oh yeah.
And he wanted to hit me. Like he was just all of a sudden the corner started to hit me, and I started hitting back. Like it's just like, what are you doing? Like and that was probably the worst thing I ever had. Like the worst match I ever had. Like I just had no continuity and had nothing. It was just like why is like I don't know what the issue was. Like I was again, it was probably that one that ill-seated. Why is this guy going over? Because I've been in the business so long, and what's this kid doing, right? And kind of as a kid, you get shit scared, like and. I don't know. I mean, I don't really have any, real horror stories in terms of that. It probably my worst experience was Greg Gagne, just in Greg Gagne in that AWA taping. Not just trying to completely job me out and then just kind of give me an attitude. And Greg Gagne, you know what? That guy, if you go back to YouTube, and he had some exciting matches, and the guy had unbelievable energy, right? But not believable, no. Like, not believable. Yeah, he could hit you with a drop kick and get his dad sleeper on you, but he had no business being in the business. Him and Brunzell carried that tag team and stuff. So, Brunzell's got a book. I want to see that book.
I actually just worked a show with him last month, and he was selling his book there.
Yeah. It's probably where I saw the pictures.
Yeah, I was just working a show. They did the company I work for, Steel Domain Wrestling in Minnesota, did a Nick Bockwinkel tribute.
Right. Mick Karch and stuff. Those guys were there.
Oh, I love Mick.
Yeah.
Mick, Brunzell was there. Ken Resnick.
Yeah.
He referees fairly often.
He likes some of my stuff on Facebook. Right?
Ken's great.
Ken, he's awesome.
Yeah. He's always on the WWE Network all the time.
Eddie Sharkey's always there,
Yeah.
just selling around and being Eddie Sharkey.
All right, last question, very quickly, because we are being winded down. I normally don't ask this question because you've spanned so many years. The top 5 workers you've ever seen produced in this province since the day you broke in, and the 5 most embarrassing.
Whoa, that's a load of teeth. There's still a lot of friends in this business. I mean, obviously that we work with CWE right now. The talent. I want to talk about the growth of some of these guys. Like even when we first started doing the television program, I didn't understand what the big deal with ATM was. Anderson Tyson Moore, right? But that guy's really blossomed into a great wrestler now. I've watched this last bunch over the last few months. Mm-hmm. He's fantastic. Hey, sitting right beside you, Danny, the matches that you have all the time. I don't know if I can even go. I mean, I love watching Beautiful Bobby J. Okay, there's just something about Beautiful Bobby J that just right from entrance to the moon spot that he does and the stink face. I'm going to forget somebody. Tyler. We talk Tyler Colton every week. That guy. There's another guy that we've seen his evolution since he came back from Texas. After working in Texas.
Really started to be where he really started.
Yeah, and if I'm not at 5 yet, I mean. Danny, obviously you're in the top spot, but I have to put Don Callis in there too, because Don drew money for Tony Candela. Don was fantastic. Yeah. Embarrassing. There's a ton of guys. There's a ton of guys that shouldn't have been in the business, and there's a ton of guys that probably Walter put over that should never have got put over. And I'm not going to embarrass anybody in names, but there's sometimes we catch up and we sit in the dressing room. We still talk few guys, but you know, I work with Doug McCall, and he had a buddy Reno Riggins, and his name was Craig, and
Not the WCW Reno Riggins.
no. There's a couple. You know, I go back and buy some of my scrapbooks and I look at some of these names and I knew that Walter was just kind of just training him to get the money out of him. And
Carney business.
yeah, you know, exactly. And you know what? And I really think the guys want to fulfill their dreams, but you got to be realistic, and that's where I was always, you know, there is a definite chance that somebody on our roster that Kevin and I are calling a match for, we could see on Monday night sometime. There's just
definitely so many right now.
there's so many guys, right? There's so many guys that could do that, and there's, you know, the worst match we call, anything with Cannonball.
Yeah.
Well, you look at last year at this time, Jimmy Jacobs won our heavyweight championship. He's writing Raw right now.
Yeah.
He was at Raw writing it
That guy was
last
a
night.
phenomenal talent.
Yeah, that's crazy how how things happen like that.
Yeah, I mean, we wrestle. We talk about guys like the Tulip, and I don't know, well, probably in the top 5. You know, when Walter Shevchuk was wrestling in the late '70s, he was untouchable too. Everything was solid. Punches, backlogs, body slams, over the top rope. The guy was just a bump machine too. So Walter was up there too. So
For fans that want to get in touch with Dynamite Dave Petro on social media and stay in contact with you, what's the best way to do so?
I got a Twitter at the Sports Doctor, and that's some of the stuff I do in northern Canada with some radio stuff. So I have the Sports Doctor. And,
Are you like one of those sports doctors that writes some scripts for the boys?
No.
Not one of those. Okay.
No. Pay for it. That or just come down. Just probably get in touch with me through the CWE website too, because you could pass that on.
I most definitely can. Thank you very much, good sir, for sharing your insights. And we will be back next week. I'll be holding up this paper and hopefully have $300 in my hand. See you next week.